from which side of the car is Trayvon Newsom trying to take Triple X's necklace?
Drive.
Okay, so at the point that you're describing, both Trayvon Newsom and Michael Boatwright are on the driver's side?
Yes.
And while Michael Boatwright is holding the firearm on the victim, Trayvon Newsom is trying to take his property?
Yes.
What, if anything, is Triple X doing in response to any of this? What is, could you hear what he was saying?
No.
What is Trayvon Newsom, if anything, what is he saying? Were you able to hear him?
No.
At some point, what happens next after they being Trayvon Newsom and Michael Boatwright are on the same side of the driver's side of the victim's car? What happens next?
Michael Kohberger pushes Trey like to go on the other side of the car.
Does Trayvon Newsom go on the other side?
Yes.
And what happens next?
He reaches inside the car and grabs. Trayvon Newsom reaches inside the bag. Inside the car and grabs the bag.
What bag?
Triple X's bag.
Okay, do you remember what kind of bag it was?
Yes.
Tell us.
The Louis Vuitton bag.
What does Trayvon Newsom do after he grabs the bag?
As he grabbed the bag, shots are fired.
Judge, I'm going to ask him to speak to the microphone.
As he grabbed the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired?
Michael Kohberger.
And who does he shoot?
Triple X.
Where does he shoot him from? What side of the car?
Driving.
So if Triple X is in the driver's seat and Michael Boatwright is in the driver's side, the shots are coming onto Triple X's left side or right side? Which side?
Left side.
Okay. And what happens, how many times do you recall that Michael Boatwright shoots Triple X?
Maybe like 2 or 3 times.
What does Triple X do as a result of that? What does Michael Boatwright do next?
Get back in the car.
What does Trayvon Newsom do?
Comes out, slips and falls like a little bit, and then he runs the car.
What does Dietrich Williams do? Now, are all four of you back in the...
Damn, and here I am thinking that it's something I didn't even run an intro. Man, if I knew it didn't start yet, I wouldn't have started this early. Shit. Eastern time, it's actually only an hour and a half. So I was going to be cute and put on sunglasses, as you can tell from my opening picture. But I'm tired. I have not slept yet. Good morning, Mickey. And I figured watching the trial would make me go to sleep. So yeah, we've been up all night doing laundry for Dayton. So I figure I might as well go live. All right, so we could talk about Kohberger first. There's been a few of them, Connie. There's been a lot of models that were killed. A lot of influencers that were killed, that have been killed recently. All right. So I figured that if I come live while I'm absolutely exhausted, throw on some sunglasses, I'll be just like the rest of them. And I should get 500 people in here. But I didn't realize this. I thought I was not even going to be on camera. So I'm not really ready. So yeah, we're going to have to hold off on that one. I'll do that tonight. All right, so let's get into Kohberger a little bit. Actually, give me a minute because I haven't even told anybody I'm live. I don't even know who's awake. So hang on. Dum dum dum. I got the hiccups. All right. Yeah, you might hear me yawn a little. Just so you know. Hang on a second. Well, we got a whole 36 people watching. I'm a YouTube star. Well, hold on. Bear with me. All right. All right. I know it was a surprise. I was trying to go to bed. Like, I could not fall asleep for the life of me. And I'm like, you know what? I might as well just go live because I can't sleep anyway. I kept thinking about Brian Kohberger. No joke. So I'm seeing a ton of stuff about, I'm actually seeing a bunch of false information. So if you guys don't know what's going on, they unsealed the Pennsylvania records. Okay, here's a news flash though. Nothing really is going on in Pennsylvania. So it really doesn't matter that they seal it or unseal it. It has nothing to do with anything. And that's why I don't understand why everybody's making it like it's such a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. Like, okay, so they unsealed it and we can see the documents. Okay. Still doesn't mean anything in the state of Idaho. Still doesn't mean anything for Idaho. I mean, yeah, they got some stuff, but they need to be able to prove stuff. So unless I'm missing something, I really don't know why everybody is making such a huge production out of this. Just what he was wearing when he was arrested. That's what I'm saying, Mickey. It is not a big deal. And I've seen so many creators make a huge fuss over it. No, there's really nothing to it. But we'll go through the paperwork. And then I am extremely, extremely disappointed with something I saw this morning. It was the dumbest and sickest thing I've ever seen. I'm not going to call out the creator because I really don't like to do that unless I really don't like someone. But someone who uses a spirit box actually said that the spirit box said, Dylan, you're in trouble. Lock it. Okay, really, dude? The spirit box did not say, Dylan, you're in trouble. Just stop. Now, this is coming from someone who was like probably one of the first people to even call out Dylan and was saying like something's not right. But has Dylan been arrested? No. Has Dylan been in any amount of trouble? That's a hard no. So the fact that you're putting this out there is disgusting. You can have an opinion, but don't say a fucking spirit box is saying, Dylan, you're in trouble. That is the craziest shit I've ever seen. I mean, that's like Bullhorn Betty kind of bullshit. Like, that's some sick-ass bullshit. You don't do shit like that. It's nothing wrong with having an opinion. Absolutely nothing wrong. But don't fucking make it out like your spirit box is saying it. Give me a break. As far as the gloves go, yeah, let me pull up the list so I can go through it with you guys. Hold on. Okay. All right. So, 28-year-old was arrested on December 30th in connection with the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students on November 13th. A silver flashlight. Big deal. He had a flashlight. Medical style gloves, which he may wore all the time. And dark clothing. If you're going by dark clothing, you probably want to stay out of my closet because it's like 90% black. Dayton's closet, 90% black. And among the items seized from Brian Kohberger when he was arrested at his parents' house in Pennsylvania in late December, as part of the investigation into murders of 4 University of Idaho students, according to newly unsealed search warrant. On Tuesday, a court in Pennsylvania unsealed the December 30th search warrant, which led to the arrest of Kohberger, 28, who has been charged with the November 13th killings of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Consalvis, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin. According to the search warrant, police seized a silver flashlight, woo, 4 medical-style gloves, woo, a large white Arizona jean t-shirt, a black sweatshirt, a pair of black and white sneakers, socks, shorts, boxer shorts, and 1 buccal swab where they arrested Kohberger. Oh my God, stop the presses, people. Is there anybody in this room that doesn't have those things in their house? I most certainly do. Yes, she did. The middle name is Maddie K. Maddie K. I forgot the first name. The documents all show the investigation. The investigators began surveillance on Kohberger and his parents' property days before he was arrested. Okay, that's something we knew already. Investigators began physical surveillance of the property and area of 119 Lambston Drive, Chestnut Hill Township, and in the early morning hours of Tuesday, December 27th, observed Brian Kohberger walking near the residence, the report reads. Okay, and affiants believe that Kohberger is located inside this residence and in possession of items related to the investigation. It continues. And based upon the serious and violent nature of these crimes, including the risk of general public safety, your affiants are requesting a nighttime search warrant be issued to execute this search warrant at any time and the affidavit of probable cause be sealed. Kohberger was arrested after police examined surveillance footage and cell phone records from the night of the murders happened and discovered a knife sheath left behind at the scene. DNA on the button snap of the knife sheath linked Kohberger to the crime per the affidavit. Surveillance footage from that night also captured a white Hyundai Elantra sedan, like the one Kohberger owned, driving around the neighborhood and in the immediate area of the victim's house around the time of the killings. After he was arrested, Moscow police confirmed that they had seized the car from his parents' house. Now, so far, is there anything I've read that you guys didn't know? Because I don't think I'm psychic. I think this is all stuff we know and I've heard before. During a search of Kohberger's apartment, also conducted at the end of December, maybe because that's when he was arrested, authorities found a nitrate black glove, 8 possible hair strands, a possible animal hair strand, a dark red spot, which was collected without testing, and 2 cuttings from a reddish-brown stain on an uncased pillow. Kohberger was a criminology PhD student at Washington State University in Pullman, which is about 10 miles from the University of Idaho, where the victims went to school. Last week, the University of Idaho announced that the house where the students were killed is scheduled to be demolished. According to the Associated Press, the owner of the home has offered to give it to the university, and the school has accepted and will have the house knocked down by the end of the semester. It remains unclear if there is a connection between Kohberger and the victims, and the police have not released a motive. He is currently being held at Latah County Jail in Moscow, Idaho, and facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and a felony burglary charge. His next court date is set for June 26th. Additional warrants from Kohberger's arrest are scheduled to be made public on Wednesday. Okay. Theodora Maddie K, thank you. So, guys, help me out here. Is this major news? Because I'm sorry, I didn't learn anything new. They got a bunch of basic stuff that every single person in this world has in their home. Oh my God, Brian owned a flashlight. Lock him up. He's got a flashlight. Brian owned black clothes. I can assure you he's not the only person in the world with black clothes. Every single thing on that list is ridiculous. But let me explain how the law works, in case some of you guys may not know. They wanted it sealed originally because they didn't know what they were going to find. So in order to protect themselves, in order to protect the public, they needed to say they wanted sealed just in case they did find something big, like the knife or pictures or something that definitively proved he did it. Then they wanted that sealed, but they didn't know what they were going to find. It's the exact same thing that happened in the, when I explained this last time, when it came to Idaho. But they asked for that seal, not after he was arrested. I mean, not after they went in and looked. They asked for that seal before they knew what was in there. And that's smart because, again, you don't know what you're going to find. You have no idea what you're going to find. So because you don't know what you're going to find, you want to seal it just to make sure that there is nothing major. So once they found out that they have nothing, now they're going to unseal it. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Pennsylvania is not involved in this. This is, nothing happened in Pennsylvania other than an arrest. Pennsylvania has absolutely no ties to this case. There's nothing that Pennsylvania can do. They just happen to be along for the ride because that's where he was arrested. Guys, trust me when I tell you, there's nothing here. There's no smoking gun. There's nothing to write home about. There's no major titles that need to go on it. Now, I could string you guys along and I could play like the other people and I could make it out like there's something, but I can't do it. I got to give you the lowdown and the truth. And the truth is, this is nothing. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that they unsealed it. It's not a big deal what they found. It's not a big deal that it was sealed to begin with. Everybody's making this out to be something that it's absolutely not. Hold on. My eye itched. And I don't know why everyone's trying to make it out, but I can give you 18 hours of live streams of bullshit wrapped up in 10 minutes. There's nothing to this. Honestly, there's nothing. So, all right, time to go to bed. No. And I don't know why everybody's making this like it's such a major production. It's nothing. And they found, I think I read yesterday, let me see if it's on here. I could have sworn that I saw Nike sneakers. Well, the only footprint that they allegedly found was a Vans sneaker. Well, Brian didn't have Vans sneakers. Brian wore Nike sneakers. Yeah, I don't know why that's not on here. Arizona jeans, champion sweatshirt. Oh yeah, right there. Nike shoes. Black and white, size 13 Nike shoes. Okay. So we had a big foot. Under Armour socks, Under Armour shorts, Under Armour black boxers. Okay, it's a typical guy who liked Under Armour. Now, I don't know what that's crossed out. Nothing follows something something. I can't tell what that is. They're in big trouble if they don't have more or find victims' blood or DNA. I don't know. I really don't. Could be ankle sock. It's funny though. I literally just bought Dayton Under Armour ankle socks yesterday. There's a Nike shoe that has similar print to Vans. How do you know? Hey, active shooter. Where did you hear that? Because I have never heard that before. But they said it was Vans. They didn't say it was something similar. They said it was Vans. They said it was an exact Vans bottom. So, yeah. And I don't know. No, my kids wear ankle socks 24/7. Even when we're in cold weather, they always wear ankle socks. They don't like higher socks. So that's not true, actually. It's not suspicious at all. Like Phoenix cannot handle regular socks. He can only wear ankle socks. They said Vans type 1. Thank you. Yeah, Phoenix don't care if it's 20 below. He's wearing ankle socks. I am all ankle socks all the time, yeah. Even Dayton goes to Iowa, still ankle socks. So do mine, I don't trust them. The affidavit states Vans style diamond pattern. I thought they said specifically it was Vans shoe. But that's why I said, Amber, I could be wrong, but I could have sworn they said a Vans shoe. I wear nothing but no-shows. See? That's what I'm saying. I don't really wear socks because I wear Uggs, so I don't need socks. But I totally hear you, Monica. I know the boys will not wear anything but. I mean, I do wear socks around the house, but I only wear soft, cushy socks. All right, well, let me take a look at something. Hold on. Yo, Nike put some glitter on the side of their shoes, and they're charging almost $200 for them. Yep, you heard that right. $380 to put some cheap-ass glitter. Hey, Mark. $159 just to do that. I could do that for somebody. Does anyone want these shoes? I can make them. $315. Are they fucking out of their minds? No socks makes your boots stink. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know. I want these. Do they come in my size? All right. I was looking for diamond bottoms. All right. That's a Chinese company. That's what I'm saying, 420. Okay, so I don't believe that Nike has a sneaker that looks like Vans on the bottom. Because every single manufacturer has their own, like, thing. And Nike, I can't see Nike having a bottom that's diamonds just like Vans. Nike Cron, all right, let me look. No, it's not diamonds. It's like a V. And they have a Nike thing. You know, the signature. Herringbone bottom, that's what it is. Yeah, that's totally different. That's totally different than Vans. You're saying Nike Air? Nah, Nike Air doesn't have a diamond-shaped bottom. Oh. Yeah, I knew they didn't have a diamond-shaped bottom. Nike has its own brand. I don't know how else to say it. Their outsoles are different than any other outsole. So that's why I'm wondering, like, where you guys heard that. Was it like some sensationalistic channel? Was it someone talking out their ass? Or were you just guessing? Because the front of it may have looked the same. But yeah, Nike always has their own thing. I mean, that may be a little, but it doesn't look like a Vans. Vans is totally different. Gucci shoes? I can't afford Gucci shoes. No, the reason why we're looking it up is because they retrieved a pair of Nike sneakers from Brian's. Okay, the kid wore Nikes. And what I was saying was that doesn't match the big hoopla of, oh my God, you know, the Vans shoe. That's why we were looking it up, for those of you that came in late. Hey, Kimmers. I think that lists just what he has on his personal search warrants for the parents' house and car haven't been released yet. Yeah, but even so, that's the thing though. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what's in the search warrants. Who cares? The search warrants were done before they found anything. So they don't know what they're going to find. It could be nothing. But they had to seal it originally. Personally, I don't think they have anything, and that's why they're unsealing it. That's my own personal opinion. Hey, True Texan. That really is my personal opinion. They're releasing it because there's nothing there. Oh, hold on. You know what I can look at? Oh, let me look up Vans outsole diamond. Yeah. Yeah, that's Vans. That's the Vans. Which, again, in its own right is extremely similar. I mean, is extremely unique. And I think all of Vans shoes have that same page. And you want to know something, Amber? I do think they have enough. All right, let me put it like this. They definitely have enough to go to trial. And that's all that's happening in June or July, whenever it is just, do they have enough evidence to go to trial? They absolutely have enough evidence to go to trial at this moment. And then we'll see all the evidence. And that's what a lot of people are forgetting. Everyone's got to remember, they're not going to trial in June. The only thing they're going to trial for in June is just to make sure they have enough evidence in order to bring it to court. That's it. They definitely have enough evidence that it deserves a trial. And at that point, he may take a plea or he may go all the way. Well, they have more than enough to go to trial, absolutely. Unless they're full of shit. Now, if none of those hairs match, if none of the dog hairs, if that dog hair doesn't match, if they don't have anything matching, he could walk in June. But if any of that connects, they have enough to go to trial. It's circumstantial and it's trial by media, by social media. Because 3/4 of social media have them guilty. Not that it matters for the judge, but it kind of makes prosecution's case a little easier. Because the data DNA is transfer, that's what I'm saying. But they have enough to go to trial. That's what I can't stress that enough. The June court date, it doesn't really matter what they have right now. They may have stuff they're saving for the real trial, or they may not have enough that they have to save, and they're doing everything right now. That I don't know. That remains to be seen. Hey, K-Rocks. However, what we do know, do they have enough to take this to trial? I think absolutely they do. And even if they don't, they bullshitted enough that they kind of do. You know what I mean? Hang on, I gotta get my drink. Ugh. Drinking some beer, smoking some pot. That's a good life. Let's face it, they will not take a chance to arrest them. Oh, yes, they will. They do it all the time. All the testing comes back negative, would they risk acquittal? No, that's what I'm saying, though. I think they bullshitted enough. I think they bullshit enough that they believe they have a... Hold on, I'm filling my vape juice. That they believe they have enough to go to trial because they bullshitted their way through it, even if they don't have anything. Because they want a trial. Because they know they'll find him guilty. And they never looked for anyone else. Can't forget that either. They stopped looking as soon as they arrested him. They needed an arrest before the first of the year. All right, K-Rocks. They needed an arrest the first of the year. They couldn't go into the first of the year without an arrest, and they got one. Now, do I think he's guilty? Yeah, I do. But I got to give him a fair trial. I got to give him a fair shake in the court of law. But my personal opinion, yeah, he's guilty as fuck. That's just personal opinion. But I can also separate if I was sitting on a trial. That's why I say they know what they know. Yeah, but don't give them too much credit either, Tony. I'm going to read you guys something that I read this morning. I thought it was a great post. Hold on. It's me, Jay, because great minds think alike. Hold on. Nope. All right. So it's from Crime Time at JB Gunner. He said, hearing someone say, wait, you don't know what kind of hidden evidence they got is ridiculous. News and commentators can only comment on available info and speculation. Speculation is simply for fun. Hearing you clowns say you don't know what they have is the equivalent of having a conversation with someone who is lonely or broke and saying, wait, don't say you're lonely or broke. You have no clue what kind of ass or money that you'll maybe have in the future. Some of you are fucking idiots and clowns. Sign management. I have to agree with that post because he's right. And then some of the comments, you basically say, pay no attention to the evidence that we know about. Just stay silent until we know everything. And it's true. You said they don't have anything on BK, so it's perfectly reasonable to point out that you don't know what they have. All right, I can make that easier to hear. He's saying they don't have anything on BK, meaning that they don't have DNA. They don't have as of what we know right now, they don't have shit. They have circumstantial bullshit. That's all they have. That's all they got. Circumstantial bullshit. There's no smoking gun. There's no knife. There's no weapons. There's no obvious, and there's no confession. But most importantly, there's no obvious kick in the ass. Here we go. We got you 100% unequivocally. We win. No, they don't have that. That's what JB is saying. I'm not saying that to you guys. I'm saying it to those in the back. And he's right. JB, I would like your opinion on a sealed document. BK defense discovery. They applied to unseal it. Judge said no. It would be detrimental to a person's private details and character. Sorry, not sure what DACA was called. A. Taylor went to court to get it unsealed. Seems like BK's evidence sitting someone. You probably would have more insight as to what it means if you can. So they spoke on it on my last live. It's all about public perception. The state of Idaho needs Kohberger to be guilty, so they are poisoning the public well. Kohberger being guilty and locked up is good for that college town, and they are going to try to keep it that way. He's right. But there's more to that answer, though. So the question again was, I would love your opinion on a sealed document. BK's defense discovery. They applied to unseal it. Judge said no. It would be detrimental to person's private details and character. Now, we don't know all of the documents that there are. I truly believe that they're unsealing stuff because there's nothing to it. That's what I think. The defense wants people like me and a lot of you guys to not rah-rah for Brian, because personally I think we all believe he's guilty, but believing guilty and proving guilty are definitely two different things. And I think this might be a defense way to, get the same public reaction where people are making him guilty. Well, now you have the opposite side. People are gonna, people with logic and common sense are now going to start speaking on that. And that's going to get out there. So in my personal opinion, they don't have anything and they know it. And that's why she wants to open it. Why seal it? You got nothing. But as long as it's sealed, then it kind of looks like they got something. Then it kind of seems like they got something. If they just seal it. If they keep it sealed, then it sounds better. It sounds like they got something secretive. Because the defense has it already. There's no other reason why, it's not sealed from the defense. They know what's in there. So the fact that she knows what's in there and they don't need it unsealed for anything to do with them leads me to believe they want it unsealed for the reasons I just stated. That's my personal opinion. And everything I know about the law, I think I'm right. Whoop. Oh, you're not enjoying me? You're just enjoying chat? Thanks, Tony. No. Yeah, honestly, that's what I think is going on. Now, again, I could be wrong, but that's what I think is happening. Hey, Kaz. So basically saying all reporters are full of crap. Are you suggesting they're not? Definitely not. Just surprised at the honesty about himself. Reformed Hammer about myself. I'm not a reporter dummy. Reformed Hammer. I'm what's called a commentator. He's not a reporter. Reformed Hammer. Reformed Hammer's a name. And you missed the entire point of the fucking post. There are known facts and there is speculation. Those two things are very different. It's not it's not us that don't know the difference. It's clearly some of you low IQ'd fuckers in the audience that sit and watch YouTube all day. LOL. By the way, if you don't want to be insulted, then watch your fucking mouth and try not to insult a motherfucker when you spend your time watching. I don't spend my time watching you. Commentator comments on facts. A reporter runs their mouth about nothing to get ratings, or in the case of wannabe reporters, likes is their desire. Commentator suggests knowledge. Wannabe. This is hilarious. I assured everyone knew the difference between reporters and YouTubers. Wow, so much makes sense now. No, I didn't. I understand you're crying because you're getting called out for spreading gossip and calling it fact. You tried to fake it and got called out again. Fake what? What so-called facts did you call me out for? Not a single one. You clearly don't know the difference between a commentator and a reporter. My job, that I get paid 6 figures to do, is to comment on news stories and cultural issues, to give my opinion. You seem to not understand the concept of editorializing. I don't get paid 100 fucking grand a year. Yeah, he's clearly new to this. Either state what gossip I called fact and prove your point, or you'll be leaving. If you're gonna come make a claim, back it up. What gossip did I spread? CP, to be fair, he's clearly a goober that didn't even know how to take a picture correctly. You assume an awful lot. I'm clearly the person that triggered you, and I've been through countless cases over the last 37 years. A 16-age man, I don't know. They claim he did. Time travel, how come you're bringing up Dylan again? I just want to know, where's all the hate? When I said Dylan had something to do with this, I got so much hate. People were coming at me left and right. But now it's perfectly acceptable. Please make that make sense. No, Edward, that is something that John Wayne Gacy said when he got arrested as well. It's like a serial killer thing. That's why I believe he said it. I don't believe he said it anything to do with his dad. He was trying to point. Now remember, Brian believes he's smarter than everybody else. He was just trying to point guilt about himself to, kind of get out of himself. Hey, Amanda. To strew it away from himself. But again, John Wayne Gacy said the exact same thing. I agree, it's me, Jay. Doesn't have anything to do with hate. It's nothing personal. I was just, no, time travel. I don't mean you. I'm saying that, wasn't Gacy? Who was? I thought it was Gacy. I'm just saying, when I originally said that she was guilty of something, oh my God, I had hate spawning. Everybody was after me. How could you fucking say that? Blah, blah, blah. You're so horrible. She's a victim. And now everyone said, a month later, now everyone says it. Or 2 months later, everyone says it and nobody has a problem. That's my problem. Oh, Bundy. You sure it was Bundy and not Gacy? I could have sworn it was Gacy, but you might be right. I know one of them said it. And if it was Bundy, then it makes perfect sense. Because he's getting compared a lot to Bundy. For obvious reasons. Someone could kill 4 people in a vulnerable situation like sleeping, as 2 girls were, and the other 2 had no idea until BK was killing them. True, too. Oh. Hang on 1 second. So, what trial is this? Nice gun.
It stays the same angle, right? But for different height people, the gun has to get higher and higher, right? Like that.
And if I go backwards, it's got to get lower and lower.
Right, because if you walked up to the quail pen, the hole's 50 inches above the ground, which is right here.
So I'd have to be like
Slightly
that.
down, right?
Like this?
For your height, right. About
Just like-
a little bit lower. No, about like that.
At the quail pen.
At the quail pen. So you can see, if you back up, you have to get lower and lower and lower. Not like, but the gun has to stay the same angle.
Oh, so it's got to be up, but
Up.
I go down.
You go down
Or get shorter.
to put the barrel on that green line.
No, that's not Murdaugh trial. Oh, this is Murdaugh trial? Oh.
And you measured Alex's foot to knee.
Right.
So where would this gun be placed on me if I'm 6'4"?
Well, if you're 6'4", you know, your hip is going to be about 46 inches, which will be about right here. It's 46,
Right.
and so you've got your trigger hand
Right.
about where your hip is. So it would have to be, your trigger hand is going to have to be up where I'm pinching the tape measure.
And this is how far away from the quail pen?
Well, it could be anywhere, but if you raise it some more, a little bit lower, right? So then, if you're at the quail pen, the hole is right here, right? You can shoot from the hip.
Have to shoot like that?
Yeah, you'd have to shoot lower.
If I'm back where you say the lines converge, I think it has to be pretty low, right?
Yes, it has to be very low. That's why it's to get a position that would be either shooting or aiming,
Right.
or a basic shooting position. You need to be shorter. If you're bending over in some other body position, that may be maybe somewhat of an awkward shooting position, then you can be taller, right? You can be taller than 5'2" to 5'4".
But his, I think you told us his foot to knee was 25 inches.
25 inches.
And would it be, proportionally for me, where would I be?
Fortunately for you, your trigger hand is going to have to be back down where your kneecap is.
Right about here?
About like that, right? And then point upwards 3 degrees. That would be the equivalent of somebody who's 6'4" in the area where the 2 shot lines cross, shooting into the quail pen. They would be holding the gun like that if they were on their feet.
Okay, thank you. Please take a stand. Based on the angles and the basically trigonometry is what you're saying.
Nobody is holding a gun that low and shooting.
To have the ejected shells in the appropriate place, you can mark that place on this sketch where these two folks are. That's sort of the range.
Yes, and you can see some of the ejected shells, but they're right beside the body.
Right.
Just off where I've got the yellow sticky.
Okay.
That is the area where you have, I believe, 2, 3, and 4. So 3 empty, 300 blackout cases.
Okay. And that would be consistent with the position of the shooters in this position, and based on the angle of the bird cage, they would be somewhere between 5'2" and 5'4".
That is correct.
To have a shot from the hip, the lower part having almost crouched down head.
Yes.
Okay, let's bring in my two great guests for this hour to break down this testimony. I still have forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan here with me, and also joining me now is psychologist Dr. John Delatorre. Joseph, I want to start with you. You have a lot of experience in terms of forensic investigations, including what we saw being portrayed in the courtroom through this testimony from Mr. Sutton. What did you think? I just want to get your opinion. What did you think about his opinion, given what he testified to as the proposed height of the shooter and the defense argument that it couldn't have been Alec Murdaugh?
Yeah, I don't know where those numbers come from. You know, the 5'2" up to 5'4". That's an odd number when you think about the average height of a male in America and even a female. It blows that number out of the water because females and males are actually higher on average than that height. So what are you talking about? And also,
My question is, when is this guy ever doing his job? Because I see him on every single talk show from morning, noon, and night. So I want to know when he actually does his job.
move our shoulders and our elbows and wrist all in these different positions. So this is not, and he, Harpootlian, talked about that this is basically trigonometry. Well, trigonometry, when you're working trig problems, you're talking about something that's static. This is not a static event. You can get into any.
Nah, you're wrong, Carlos. This isn't a black and white issue. This is a money issue. If a black man had the same money and power that he had, it would be the same.
Number of positions relative to this, and to wind up with your final solution that the person is this diminutive is a bit of a far reach for me, I think. And when you're saying, that there is no possibility that this could have been Alec Murdaugh, I think that you probably need to go back in and recalculate.
Yeah, and Dr. John Delatorre, I want to bring you in and get your perspective of this. This was an opportunity for the defense really to drum up and raise some reasonable doubt in terms of Alec Murdaugh being the shooter, and this testimony was received by the jury. How do you think it was received, and do you think they were able to do so in terms of drumming up some reasonable doubt with this witness's testimony?
I mean, not with this witness's testimony. I think a lot of it has to do with if I say more science words, then it's going to come across as if I'm being scientific. The truth is that, yes, it's certainly possible that the height of the shooter could have been, within a certain range, and maybe Alec Murdaugh doesn't fit that range, but the shooter could easily have been holding the weapon in such a way so that it doesn't come across as threatening. So it's certainly possible that someone could have approached, including Alec Murdaugh, approached Maggie and had the gun hidden away and fired from that angle. That it doesn't necessarily mean that someone is of a certain height. It just could have been positioned that way.
And that's why I didn't run it. But closing statements were always interesting. That's why I'm waiting for the closing statements. I always enjoy closing statements. They're usually pretty good. I think he's guilty of conspiracy. I don't think he's guilty of the murder. But I definitely think he's guilty of conspiracy.
and the suspect were moving.
And how do you know that?
Well, suspect would be the different firearms evidence, the cartridge cases. Like I said, there's no absolute. They're not going to throw them the exact same spot, but they will throw them in a similar direction. We've got cartridge cases in a pretty nice sized perimeter. We've got them at different locations from where Miss Maggie Murdaugh's body, the final resting place, and different angles and different positions in different directions. So that tells you it's very fluid and it's very dynamic.
So if I'm holding a gun and I'm moving and shooting, what is happening with those shell cases as I move?
They are moving as they're ejected.
Where was Maggie's head pointing when she hit the ground?
Miss Maggie Murdaugh's head was pointed in the direction of Paul Murdaugh, where his body rested, back toward the feed room.
What is your opinion of the defense's expert that says the shooter could not have been 6 feet 4 inches tall like the defendant Alec Murdaugh?
I think that's a flawed opinion.
Could it have been a 6'4" person?
It could have been a 5'4", 6'4", or in my opinion, a 7'4", as I just demonstrated.
Okay, there you have it. Dr. Kenneth Kinsey calling Sutton's opinion a flawed opinion. Joseph, you made a comment earlier with your analysis on Sutton's testimony that this was not a static event, and it looks like Dr. Kenneth Kinsey is agreeing with you on that. What do you think about his testimony in the clip that we just saw?
I think to this point, I think that that his opinion has a bit more weight relative to, because you have to understand, I hate to keep using this word, the dynamics of the event, but it is a dynamic event. You're talking about firing a weapon at another human being. And so it's not like you're out on a range and you're firing at paper targets. Also, the distribution of ejected casings that he was referring to, this is something that has been understood for a long time in crime scene reconstruction, because once, let's see if I have one around, once an ejected shell leaves that ejection port, it's not predictable as to where it will land, particularly if you're talking about if we had a robot that was in a fixed position and was firing this thing, even in a fixed position like this, it's still unpredictable because you don't know about the weight distribution of the individual round. You don't know about what position or what direction the wind is blowing. Even it can come down to something like that. And certainly when you begin to think about if the individual, the shooter, is moving, that round is moving, the ejected casing is moving, and it's going to be heavily dependent upon not just those factors, but also the surface that it's striking. What's the composition of the surface?
All right, let me just say, I don't know the first thing about guns, and even I know what the fuck he's saying. Like, it's common sense. If you move, your shell casings are going to move. This is not rocket science, people. I hate, this is why I have a problem watching a lot of this, because they talk to people like they're idiots. If somebody moves, their shell casing is going to move. A shell casing, depending on what it hits, is going to bounce or it's going to go through the dirt. I mean, this is common sense. I don't know why things like this need to be explained. This is why I can't watch the lawyers. Because the lawyers speak to everybody like they're fucking morons. And I guess a lot of people are. I don't know. But a lot of, I love Emily Baker, but I can't watch her anymore. Because her entire lives are answering questions that are Google it. Just go ahead and Google these questions. I don't know. Some of this is just crazy to me.
It's going to make it bounce in different directions. It's very difficult to predict what the distribution of these. Now, you can say, yeah, well, we have a significant pattern of distribution here. It looks like you have ejected shell casings that are essentially seated here, but there's no predictability to it. It's very, very random.
Yeah, and Dr. Delatorre, the jury is going to have to take this evidence, and we're waiting for closing arguments where some of this evidence is going to be summed up or presented to the jury, of course, with the arguments of each respective side's attorneys. But the jury is going to have to take this expert witness testimony and really analyze it and consider it when they deliberate. Do you think that the prosecution's expert was able to sort of answer or rebut the testimony of the defense expert?
I do, yes. But here's the catch, though. Because they're going to get an opportunity to view the actual location, I think a lot of this stuff that has been purely theoretical, even with pictures and other, exhibits and stuff like that you can, and demonstratives that they had to see, it's still theoretical, right? Because it's still kind of just gestating in their brain. But being able to actually see the location, I think, is really going to solidify what they think actually happened.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great analysis, both of you. And we're going to take a quick break here at Law and Crime. But before we do, I do want to bring you some updates on the jury review that's happening right now. First, the jury is going to be taken through the kennel entrance and have a total of 30 minutes to view the property. The bulk of their time will be spent at the kennels and the shed where Maggie and Paul were killed. Towards the end of their visit, the jury will be taken to the main house for a view of the exterior, but not inside. One more note is that one juror was standing in the feed room door, glancing up at the doorway that has been the subject of so much testimony during the course of this trial. With that, we're going to take a quick break here at Law and Crime, but we're going to be bringing you up to speed on the Alec Murdaugh trial if you missed any of it, while we wait for the jury to get back to court and closing arguments to begin. Alec Murdaugh trial, we're covering it here live. Stay tuned here at Law and Crime.
Sorry, I was chewing on a wasabi pea. Now, my question is, now keep in mind, Murdaugh is a celebrity. Murdaugh is a celebrity in Southern California, in South Carolina. His house, his everything has always been secluded, has always been hidden away. A jury is made up of people in your area. So I tend to think that is the jury really going there because they need to see it based on the case? Or are they going there because they want to see how he lived? They've never been there. They want to see what it's like. We don't know who's on the jury. There could be, the poor of the poor on the jury. We have no idea. Because if I was the defense attorney, and I'm picking a jury for someone like Murdaugh, I'm sorry, if I'm a prosecutor, not a defense attorney, I'm going to pick the lower class. I don't want the higher class. I want the lower class jurors. I want jurors that make Murdaugh unattainable. People that are going to burn Murdaugh. Yeah, but they asked to go. But people that were going to burn Murdaugh based on money alone. And I kind of wonder if, let's go see what I don't think going to the house is going to do anything. What the hell's going to the house going to do? Absolutely nothing. Oh, I thought, all right, then I'm wrong. I thought that they asked to go. I don't know why they think that it's going to make a difference. Kind of silly if you ask me. And it could backfire. I kind of think it's going to backfire on them. The state objected to and the judge overruled it. The defense asked for them to go. I wonder why, though. Did they give a reason why they wanted them to go? It's not like it's going to solve anything. All right, then I'm wrong. I thought that they asked to go. Yeah, I don't see the point of it. I really don't. I don't get the whole point of it. I don't know. During closing statements, I'll let you know. Yeah, but aren't they only going there to see if he killed his wife? I mean, they were shot dead, so what's going there going to prove? I don't know. I just think it's a silly move. I mean, the defense has their reasons, obviously. But I don't know. We'll see during closing statements. Yeah, but I can't figure out why. Why the defense want to get a feel for the space of the kennels. Like, what does that matter? We know they were murdered. So, like, what good is it going to do? I don't get it. To get an idea of the distance, how is the property spread out? See about how close exactly the kennels are to the house and if Alex should have heard gunshots. Yeah, but it was the defense.
I don't think Buster and Buxton were. I told Alec that I was going over to Greenfield. My farm that I told you all about is 2 or 3 miles away, so it's very close. And I have all, plenty of clothes over there. So I told him I was going over there to shower and put on fresh clothes, and that I would meet him at Moselle.
And did you go to Moselle?
I did, after I left Greenfield. Yes, sir.
And do you remember who was there when you got to Moselle?
I was the first one there.
And what did you do?
I just went to stay there until I knew Buster, Brooklyn, and Alec were coming. I suspected that other family members and partners, I knew others were coming, so I just kind of sat there just in disbelief still. It's just, moments of just...
Was the door to the house unlocked? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I thought about it. I don't remember.
Right.
It either was unlocked or I had the code, because there's a keypad on a side door, but I can't tell you which door I went in. I don't know.
Did you eventually go down to the kennels?
I did. Once everyone got there, there was a fair amount of activity in the house with family and law partners, Alec's law partners, Randy's law partners. I just felt like I needed to go down. I needed to see for myself what had gone on and just kind of take it in. I mean, just maybe for some type of understanding.
How long did you stay down there at the kennels?
Well, I can't. I don't know. But I will say this: before I went, I was unsure whether I was allowed to go, because I knew it was a crime scene, and so I reached out to a friend of mine in law enforcement, and said, "Listen, I don't know who's handling the crime scene. I don't know whatever." He said, "Well, I'll find out and make sure that it's clear for you to go." And he said,
See, you're saying it's heartbreaking. I'm thinking maybe he's guilty. Maybe he's the one that pulled the trigger, because I'm not buying his story.
and he said, "Don't go until I tell you." And he called me back a few minutes later and said he had spoken to I believe it was Captain Ryan Neal, and had given the okay that everything was released and it was okay to go there.
And was it cleaned up?
No, Jim, it was not cleaned up.
Were there skull fragments?
Yeah, so, you know, so, excuse me, oh, this is going to be really difficult. So I could easily see where.
Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I don't buy this guy at all. I don't buy his story. I don't buy his tears. I don't buy anything. I think he's totally full of shit. I don't know why. I just do.
Maggie had been, you know, I saw the night before where the sheets were, and somebody had told me that who was who, and so I could see where Maggie had been, and it was grass, and, you know, they had covered it up with dirt, so there really was nothing to see where Maggie was. I walked over to the feed room, and y'all have heard the descriptions. Y'all saw it. I've never seen pictures, and I've told them before coming to this court that I was not going to see pictures. But y'all can imagine what I experienced. It had not been cleaned up. I saw blood. I saw brains. I saw pieces of skull. And when I say brains, it could just be tissue. I don't know what I was seeing. It was terrible. And for some reason, I thought it was something that I needed to do for Paul to clean it up. I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like I owed him, and I started cleaning.
Why would you owe your brother? What did your brother do that you owed him to clean his son's brains off of the wall? Hire a cleaning crew. What did you do, Paul, that you owed him? What did he do for you, Paul, that you owed him? And you owed him so much that you're going to clean your nephew's brains. What did he do for you, Paul? What was the exchange that you owed him for?
And I can promise you, no mother or father or aunt or uncle should ever have to see and do what I did that day. I don't know, I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just, I was just overwhelmed. I did everything I could, and I would have moments where I would stop crying for a moment, and just in disbelief. At one point, I called my brother Randy and told him what I was doing, trying to describe what I was doing, and he immediately told me.
Okay, let me just throw a wrench in this, okay? We're not talking. All right, let me back up. I am the type of person, I do a lot of things myself. Even if it takes me 10 times longer, it's cheaper than hiring someone. However, if I had the means to hire somebody, no doubt I would do it. These people have enough money, they could hire a cleaning crew. They would hire a cleaning crew, a crime scene crew, to come and clean it up. Peeling your nephew's brains off of the ground, not to sound rude, but he's dead. He won't know. So you owing it to him is silly. Just absolutely silly. He's dead. He's not going to know. His brains are all over the place. You hire a cleaning crew because you can afford it. Yeah, but respect, Lindsay, would be you hire right people to do it.
Told me to stop doing it. It was not good for me. It was not healthy for me to be there. And I couldn't stop. I had to do it for Paul. That's just what I had to do.
Okay, emotional testimony there from Alec Murdaugh's brother. Let's bring in my two great guests to break down this testimony. Joseph, I want to start with you. To me, this was shocking testimony. The notion that Alec Murdaugh's brother is there a day after the murders and cleaning up what...
Okay, before they even answer, my personal opinion is that he cleaned it. He was trying to get rid of evidence that he knew was there. That's my personal opinion. I don't know what the experts are going to say. I don't know how they feel, but in my personal opinion, he's a liar, and there was evidence there that he was trying to clean up. That's what I think.
I would think would be an active crime scene. What's your take on that, and how damning is that potentially for the prosecution?
Bad. I think just from a professional standpoint, this is probably the most infuriating thing. What was the urgency to release that crime scene at that particular time?
Exactly.
The short period of time downrange that you feel so comfortable with the fact that you're going to release this crime scene, you still don't have anybody in custody. You still don't know, you don't have an inkling as to who may have perpetrated this crime at this point, and you're going to release this crime. I think that if anything comes back to haunt the prosecution, this case, the genesis of that is going to begin there. Because you're right, this.
Well, the experts seem to agree with me, and I knew they would. At least one of them so far.
Poor man, is talking about these things that he bore witness to, and I can conjure that up in my mind immediately because I've seen it at the scene. But we have to get past the emotion here as to what he's talking about on the stand. What is important here is that he is able to recognize anatomical elements that are out there. He said specifically skull. Okay? Skull, we're talking about a potential that's been brought up, contact gunshot wound to the head. If they're talking about that, that could have evidentiary value. We've already heard about the way the semi-intact brain was treated. All right, we've heard about no x-ray being done. We've heard that it was placed in a bucket and brought in. And look, that happened. I've participated in cases like that before. But the fact that this case, the scene was released so quickly, I think goes to a bigger issue here relative to what occurred in those moments after when the police arrived there, the security of the scene. And I cannot imagine under any circumstances why it would have been released. It's not like you're blocking traffic. It's not like there's a traffic accident that has occurred out on some major interstate. It's not like you're in some large urban area where you're going to compromise the population around there. We're talking about an isolated area. What's the problem with locking it down and getting as many eyes that are vested in the case from a forensic and an investigative standpoint out there at the scene to analyze it at that point in time? They did a lot of this at night. Okay, the beginning of this case started at night. Is there something else we could find? And to that point, there's still no weapons. They still don't have weapons, and they've released the scene? I don't know. It baffles me, and it will. I mean, long after this case is over with, no matter what happens, I'll be baffled. We will use this in class. I can tell you this, at Jacksonville State University, to teach, and it will not come down favorably with my students.
Wow, Joseph, it's going to be a teachable moment. I know you're going to be imparting to your students that this is something that you are not to do if you are part of law enforcement or part of a forensic investigation. And as a former prosecutor, I've seen cases won and lost on the value and the basis of the investigation and how the crime scene is treated by law enforcement in those very important 48 to 72 hours after a crime has been committed. And I'm shocked that this crime scene was released so quickly.
Hey, yeah, can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
I'm just wondering here. I'm wondering about, and this is a Dr. John comment. I guess this might be directed at him. I'm really wondering if this has something to do with power dynamic in this environment. You know, they've got this specter, and we've heard about this. We've heard the term that's been thrown around forever now when we've talked benevolent kings, you know, in this area. Is there a fear here, you know, that we had to, you know, release the scene because of what we're dealing with? We go back to that infamous, you know, open mic or whatever it was at the boat crash, where they said, well, you know who this is. And so is that a thread that's running through here? And I wonder if that is carried over into this is butchery that took place out there. Has it gone to this level where people are afraid at this point in time? I would like to draw that into question. I'd love to hear what Dr. John has.
Yeah, Joseph, perfect segue, and that is fascinating. And Dr. Delatorre, I want to get your perspective of what we just heard Joseph talking about. You know, is there possibly a deeper psychology that's running through this community with this particular family? What is your take on that?
That's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. Absolutely. Because that name has had so much power for such a long period of time. But here's the thing is that it can actually cut both ways. It's certainly possible that people would sort of, you know, abdicate and fawn over that Murdaugh name. And so if something happens that they're just going to allow the Murdaughs to kind of take over. But it's also possible that because Alec Murdaugh is not the same as his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, because he's not the same individual, because he has this specter of the financial crimes that pretty much everybody knew about kind of at that time as well. It's certainly possible that they found this opportunity to tear down this benevolent king to finally rid themselves of that kind of power.
Fascinating stuff. I could talk to both you gentlemen for hours about this and get your perspective. But right now we have to take a quick break here at Law and Crime. And with closing arguments happening within the next 20 minutes or so, I want to let you know that it has been confirmed that Jim Griffin will give the defense closing arguments. Not Dick Harpootlian, but Jim Griffin will be summing up for the defense to this jury. We're going to bring it live to you as soon as it begins, but we're going to take a quick break here. Stay tuned as we cover live the trial of...
I swear to you, I thought he had an earring through his top of his ear. Though I know I just wanted to say she's some eye candy. She's some... Oh, Emily? A lot of judges won't let jurors take notes. I don't know why. But I've heard that a lot, that jurors can't take notes. Maybe because they knew it was already going to be a hung trial. See, I don't know the answer. I really don't know. No, Jay, I can't watch her anymore. She spends 3/4 of her time answering basic questions. I mean, I understand she has to, but all these lawyers, they spend all their time on basic questions. I already know all those answers. Like, if I'm going to watch a lawyer, I want deeper answers. I want answers of things that I don't know. And I've never found that. It's always basic stuff. I don't need any Stoner. I don't even have freaking 100 people in here. Betty Butthead had 400 in her live today. Need I say more? It's a hung jury. Who's going to measure the guys to make sure they're really hung? Good point, time traveler. Probably Alex. People are digging, looking for any and everything. If there's a lady of the night. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was just wondering if there was a mistress. That girl that was sitting behind him, my first thought was, oh, look, there's his mistress. And that's what made me think of it. I'm finally getting tired. I can't believe I was up all night. The things I do for my kids. At the beginning, Bleach had under 100 watching the whole trial. Yeah, but I'm saying this morning, she had 400 people watching. Amanda, I don't doubt that either. It's just all of them. Everyone asks these basic questions. Like, dude, I can answer them for you. I promise. No, seriously, Stone, I've been up all night. I had to do Dayton's laundry, so he had everything to go away today. And of course, you know, he waits till the last second. I don't, actually. I'm good. But if I need one, I'll definitely mod you up. I just don't need any. There's not enough people even chatting. Oh, so 23% of you thought he just wants to see the house. 23 unsure, 55% yes, all about the case. Has so far always had it in stock when I need to fill, and I'm prescribed a lot. Dude, yesterday was a nightmare. Yeah, I got it worked out, but it doesn't even make sense. The insurance that I canceled is the one that covered it yesterday, when they don't normally cover this prescription. It's so fucking weird. Blue Cross Blue Shield specifically states they don't cover Adderall. But yet they're the only ones that covered it yesterday. But I canceled them. I don't understand. I just don't understand medical. I don't want to understand it. It's a bunch of ripoff. Total fucking ripoff. Yeah, I had a Dayton gave me a whole bunch of laundry that had to get done, and then he needed black socks. And before you knew it, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I wanted to make sure I kissed them goodbye. So I said, fuck it, I'll just stay up all night. So I've been up all night.
He's involved with his wife and child's son. Okay, and sir, give me the address again. It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's fast. Okay. How did they shoot? Did they shoot themselves? Oh no, hell no. Okay, and are they bleeding? No, ma'am. Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son? My wife and my son. Are they in a vehicle? No, ma'am, they're on the ground out at my kennel. Okay, and did you see anyone? In the head, and he shot really bad. He shot it. Okay, where is he shot at? Ma'am, I don't know, but he has blood everywhere. I see his brain. Now I started to turn a little bit. It's got a hole in her head. Okay, is he breathing at all? No, nobody. Okay, do you see anyone in the area? No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No. Is there any guns near them at all? No, just here. The police are out on the outside. If that's what you're asking, they didn't shoot themselves, ma'am. What? Police are out on the outside. It's white. You can't see it from the road. Okay, is it a house or a home?
Okay, so you hear Alec Murdaugh in that 911 call. Let's bring in my two great guests, Joseph Scott Morgan and also Dr. John Delatorre. Dr. Delatorre, I know you're leaving us at the top of the hour, so I want to get this question to you because I want to get your perspective as a psychologist as you hear a frantic and emotional Alec Murdaugh in that 911 call. how important will it be to the jury, sort of their assessment and analysis of his psychology or his psychological state after the murders?
You know, I'm constantly talking about the difference between expectation versus reality, what we expect people to do versus what exactly a person will actually do. Here's the issue that I think is at hand, is that we've constantly seen Alec Murdaugh be highly emotional. The problem is that it can have a saturation effect on the jury if they don't perceive him to be credible. He's gone on the stand and he's testified, and how they left him, right? So how the jury left that engagement, witnessing him on the stand, will determine a lot about how they perceive him moving forward. And it's certainly possible that the more emotional that he becomes, if they have a negative appraisal of who he is, they're not going to take it into account. That sympathy that other lawyers, right, that his defense attorneys may be wanting from the jury may not actually be there.
Yeah, and Dr. Delatorre, quickly, do you think that his testimony will help him or hurt him?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think ultimately it ends up hurting him more than it helps him.
Okay, Dr. Delatorre, thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime. Your perspective is always welcome and valued. Joseph, you're going to be hanging on with us as we wait for closing arguments to start in the Alec Murdaugh trial. Stay tuned here at Law and Crime. We'll be back live. Alec Murdaugh.
Thank you, Stoned. Stone's starting March off right. Who's going to join her? I'm ready to hear closing arguments too. Then I go take a nappy. So when did he go back up to the house and get the gun he had with him when the police showed up? We don't know. We don't know we don't really know the true timing though. You know, I think people forget that too. The coroner was ridiculous with how she estimated timing. My opinion, the timing could be totally wrong. He could have killed them, left, came back, got rid of the guns, got rid of everything. But I absolutely believe that the brother went there to clean up Alex's mess or to see if there was any, you know, evidence left over, if there was something. Like, you know your brother. Good morning, Amanda. So I tend to believe that he kind of knew. He kind of knew what was going on. And then he went there to clean up any kind of evidence. Now, there were 2 different guns used. Or maybe he gave the guns to his brother or a friend or someone. I'm just not buying his whole bullshit story. And I'm not buying the brother's story. But I don't know if he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think he's guilty of conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. But I don't think he's guilty of murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Hey, Krugs. You know what I mean? But I definitely think he's guilty of conspiracy, but they're not charging him with conspiracy. And conspiracy, they can't go back and get him either because it's double jeopardy. He's talking about the one he went to the house to get for protection. Oh. I don't know. It's hard when you have a house full of guns, too. But they said that one of the guns that was the one used to kill Maggie was very a rare gun, and that with the rare gun, oh yeah, we didn't hear the song, and that he happened to own that rare gun. Yeah, I agree, Daisy. See, and that's one thing I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure if it would be double jeopardy, but it is. I looked it up. It falls under double jeopardy. So that's also why I tend to think this could end up like Casey Anthony. I agree there's some reasonable doubt. I just think they should have charged him with conspiracy. They don't have enough to prove murder. They don't have enough to know that he pulled the trigger. But they have enough for conspiracy. That's what I'm having a hard time with. They should have done like first degree and like second degree conspiracy or something.
And thanks for joining us. We are following the Murdaugh family murder trial where both sides rested their case yesterday afternoon. The jury is currently on a jury review of the Moselle family property where victims Maggie and Paul were found shot to death on June 7th of 2021. We expect to get to the closing arguments around 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is now, and we're going to be bringing those closing arguments to you as soon as they begin. But joining with me now is the boots on the ground reporting of Gigi McLevy. She is with us outside the South Carolina courthouse. Gigi, what do you have for us in terms of an update of what's going on outside the court?
Well, we know Alec just got here a few moments ago. Our camera guy said he has not seen the jury return yet. I kind of thought it might be a little later than 11 since it takes 30 minutes each way to go, but there is an air of anticipation here today. Long lines, the crowd, every time a member of the prosecution comes in, they cheer them in. And so, yeah, everybody's ready to see these closings get started. We're not sure if they're going to start as soon as the jury gets back because, you know, they've been on the road since 9 o'clock this morning. We don't know if they're going to break for lunch right after we get in and then do closings after lunch. So we're all just ready to see what the day's going to bring.
Yeah, Gigi, that's really interesting what you just mentioned, that when members of the prosecution team are arriving at the courthouse, that there's applause. You know, these trials, which are very public and that the public is following, like the Alec Murdaugh trial, sort of take on that spectator, almost like sporting-like air to them. Now, just describe that for our viewers. How is that happening? They're walking into court and suddenly the people waiting for the trial to start are just clapping. Can you just describe that so we get a sense of what you're seeing?
Yeah, just the prosecution team is kind of staggered in, not coming in, seeing, you know, as individuals, coming in more like twos and threes and members of SLED, obviously. So, yeah, they're just getting, as soon as they're spotted, the crowd kind of starts clapping and cheering, and it quits as soon as they go in. But now the public's being let in, so it looks like maybe they've got word the jury is either here or close. So hopefully we get underway soon and see when these openings are going to start.
And do you have any idea of how the jury view went? If the jury is coming back, have you heard any inklings of how the actual viewing went?
I haven't heard anything yet. I did see the update from the reporter who went with the jury on that view. They left about 9:10, warned them to be on the lookout for snakes, by the way. It's low country, it's warm, it's humid out. They like this weather. They were going to spend 30 minutes at the kennel area at the very end, go up and see the exterior of the house, and then on their way back. So we haven't heard how it went, but definitely if they're not back, they're close.
And Gigi, do you have a sense of what the high points or what the points that the public that you see out there are looking for? Of course, they're not the jurors, but I like to call them armchair jurors. And, you know, the sense that you get from the public while you're outside the courtroom, are they expecting that this is going to be a prosecution win, a hung jury, or an acquittal?
Most people in line really are divided. I've talked to several, and they just feel like it's either going to be guilty or a hung jury. I think we all can agree it's probably not going to be a not guilty. But people have varying opinions where somebody said, in my heart, I think he did it, but I'm not sure the state had enough to convict, to where the next person in line says, I was convinced 100% with the evidence, guilty as charged. So it's going to be interesting, though, the 12 people that matter most, what are they going to decide?
And Gigi, we hear that Jim Griffin is going to be delivering the summation, the closing argument for the defense. Was that expected, or do you think that people thought Dick...
See, this is the way I see it. We're, let's say, 100 people. If you look at the poll, it's 50-50. She's saying people outside the courtroom are 50-50. So that only leads me to believe that the jury is going to be 50-50. Plain and simple.
So we know they wanted to split the closings between the two of them. The judge and the state did not want that. So, yeah, I think Jim Griffin, either one of them would have been great. They're both, look, I mean, by default, trial watchers hate the defense for the most part, but they're very good at what they do. So I'm interested to see what both sides say to wrap this up, to plead their case and get the verdict they each want.
Okay, Gigi, thank you, as always, for the update. Outside the courthouse there in Walterboro, South Carolina, and we're going to let you go into that courthouse for the closings, and we're going to check in with you later in the day for your great reporting. For us at the network back here in New York City, I want to show some more testimony from one of the last witnesses who was called yesterday. It's an attorney that used to work with the defendant. His name was Mark Ball. Let's take a look at that clip while we wait for closing arguments to begin.
You said you've known the defendant for how long?
34 years.
Knowing what you know now, was he able to...
Daisy, that I'm not sure about.
I didn't know the stealing. I didn't know any of that. And, it's not the way a plaintiff's practice works. You work on your own cases unless you're working with somebody else. And so you wouldn't necessarily be talking about his particular cases. So it's sort of yes and no. I mean, obviously, a lot of things that I was told and a lot of things just weren't there. I mean, the blue lights, the reasoning for the blue lights, the money missing from our account when he cashed the 2 checks, all of those types of things. Obviously they weren't truthful.
And did you feel like you knew the defendant well prior to June?
Sure thought I did.
Okay, so that was the testimony from Mark Ball. Let's bring in my 2 great guests. I still have Joseph Scott Morgan with me. I also have joining me now Mark Mangino. He is a criminal defense attorney. Mark, I want to start with you. This was one of the last witnesses that we saw testify in this courthouse. Of course, weeks of testimony before this jury that is going to have to be summed up and presented to the jury and marshaled, that evidence by both sides in this case in closing arguments. What do you think about that testimony that we just saw? Was it something that's going to impact this case in any meaningful way?
Well, I think this is what the the prosecution is going to pound on, and that is that Alec Murdaugh is a liar. He's deceitful. He has misled really everybody in his life, his family, his partners, his friends, the police. So this is going to be a theme that we're going to hear from.
But being a liar and a thief doesn't make you a murderer to kill your own son.
Look at his track record. Let's look what he's done up to this point. There's an old common law adage, false as in one, false as in all. And I think that's what the prosecution is going to pound away at in their closing argument.
And Matt, let me get your perspective from the defense side. I agree with you. I think that the prosecution is going to be highlighting the credibility or lack thereof of Alec Murdaugh to this jury. But on a defense perspective, Matt, what do you expect to hear once they start arguing to this jury?
Well, it's going to be about doubt. They're going to pound away at doubt. They're going to hammer. I mean, the last witness that the prosecution called on rebuttal said that he couldn't say for sure whether there were 1 or 2 shooters. So they're going to pound away at those types of issues. How did someone shoot two people without any defensive wounds with two different guns in very close proximity to one another. So they're going to pound away at those issues that this is a circumstantial case, and the prosecution hasn't met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. There are a lot of issues here that just don't add up when you look at the totality of the evidence that the prosecution presented.
And Joseph, let's talk about some of the actual investigation and the crime scene investigation that occurred in this case. And we've been talking about that. One of the issues that the prosecution may have is the way the crime scene was treated after these murders occurred. Do you think that the defense will be looking to really highlight that to this jury to raise that reasonable doubt?
Yeah, most certainly. As a matter of fact, reflecting back, there was actually a great witness that the defense put up, if I remember correctly, and it was one of the former law partners that talked about how he was out there and he witnessed all of these items lying about relative to the scene, what he saw out there. He saw people coming and going through all of these areas, and this guy is a civil attorney. He's not engaged in criminal defense in any way, at least to my understanding. And he was even able to appreciate this, that there was something wrong. So they put him up there for a reason. I think that this is something that they're going to hammer at, as my buddy Matt had just stated. They're going to hammer away in that particular area, scene security, collection of evidence, perhaps even processing of evidence. I think that's going to be a big part of it moving forward, certainly in closing.
And we're going to take a quick break here at Law and Crime, but when we come back, I'm going to be talking to you, and I have a lot more questions that I'd love to ask both you gentlemen, because your insight is always so great here. And we are what I'd like to say or call summation watch here at Law and Crime. We are waiting for closing arguments in the Alec Murdaugh.
Yo, they better get started with these closing arguments or I'm not going to make it. I'm getting bored and I'm tired. And this guy is not very entertaining. He's actually kind of boring. But I'm trying to get through it. Sis San, I don't agree with that because it's an extremely open area. If anybody comes anywhere near the house, they're going to be alerted from dogs and they have guns. If I lived in the middle of the woods, I probably wouldn't have a Ring camera either. You know what I mean? I think it's just too open of an area. That guy looks shady too. He's just boring. Like, some of the law and crime people are good. This one I find boring. But that's good, though. I wanted boring, so I got tired. I've been eating a lot. I gotta stop eating. I'm gonna gain weight. Which won't be a good thing. So back to Kohberger for a moment. I don't remember what I was going to say. See, now I'm getting really tired. Because my belly's full. So it's March 1st. Woo-wee! Springtime is here.
The state started to go down this road, but didn't really tie it back round. So from the kennel video, that's before, because Bubba gets a chicken in his mouth during the kennel video. So from the time of the kennel video to the time he gets a chicken out of Bubba's mouth, talks to his family, does whatever, the hose is still going, puts the chicken down, to the time when their phones go silent is minutes. So how does he get the chicken away from Bubba, put Bubba back in his pen, because Bubba's only listening to Alec apparently, put Bubba back in his pen, get back to the house and not hear gunshots? How? And I think that is where the state needs to focus the timeline. And why? Why not go up and check? How do you get back home, lay down on the couch, turn on the TV, and hear nothing else? And then why do you lie about being at the kennels right during the small window when they were killed, according to the state's theory? That when asked, what did you do after you got the chicken out of Bubba's mouth? I got out of there. Why say that? Why no regret? I got out of there, or I left. I went down to the house. I went to take a nap. I was starting to sweat. I was hot. I got out of there. But that goes both ways for me.
She's been live 10 minutes. She's got 30,000 people in there. That's pretty funny.
Does I got out of there mean he knows somebody's coming? Or does I got out of there mean he knows he doesn't want to be there when the time of the murders are when he's talking to people? I don't know. But the state needs to argue it. I think I got out of there is perfect, and I hope the state brings it back up. I got out of there. We'll see. I think it can go both ways depending on what the jury's thinking. So they need to argue the timeline. They need to argue about the family guns. The defense is going to argue that they're not, that the science isn't perfect, and that those aren't family guns. They're similar guns. But I think the state has to hammer on who is coming onto this property at night, looking for Maggie and Paul, not going to the house to check and see if Alec's there when his cars are all there, leaving him alive, and then he leaves and goes and sees his mom. Talk about the fact that he says he turned them over and checked everybody's pulse before he called 911, but he's only there for 17 seconds at the kennels to see them, perceive what happened, and then call 911. And then that timeline changed. And the defense is going to talk about trauma. He might not have known exactly what he did, but the GPS tells us that he got up there, and we know from 911 that he called 911. And he said he got blood on his fingertips. He never explained where it went. He didn't wipe it on the white shirt. He didn't wipe it on his pants or his legs. It was nowhere. So where did it go? And why is he nervous to say he's cleaning up or he washed his hands? I checked their pulse and this is my family and I washed my hands. Why be worried about saying that? Unless you did more than just wash your hands. So I think that's where the state needs to go. Timeline. He would sit on this jury stand and lie to you. We know that. Okay. Go through the inconsistencies. Leave alone the thefts. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. He didn't lie because he was afraid of SLED. Right? He didn't lie because he was worried about SLED. He lied to Colton County. He lied to his friends. He lied. Fine, he lied. He's a liar. Great. Timeline. For the defense, they need to hammer on.
See, like, Jay, here's my problem. This is my problem with her. Is that I like her. But who cares what your opinion is or what the defense can do? Like, it's not going to change anything. They're not listening to you. So what's the point? She's just giving her opinion. But most people don't realize she's just giving an opinion from a lawyer's standpoint. I mean, if you look at her super chats, they're asking like the stupidest questions. He is a joke to his family name. Let's go on our channel based on her career background. Yeah. She got, I mean, I watched her when she had like 1,000 people. And I don't mean 1,000 people in a live. I mean like 1,000 subs. And then Johnny Depp happened. And it skyrocketed her. I mean, she was doing really well before that. But Johnny Depp skyrocketed her. And she was good during Johnny Depp. But Yeah, that's why I have a problem with it, though. She makes so much money. So much money. See, but that's the thing, though. You want to know how you make so much money on YouTube? You ignore your chat. And then they super chat you with questions. I've never done it, but that is what they do. And that's why these people just keep throwing money, because they're trying to get questions answered. I've never done that, but it's backfired on me. It's absolutely backfired on me. Because I would think that people like that, but they don't. They want to be ignored so they can give you money. Just to get their questions answered. And I've seen it over and over and over. And not just on like big channels like hers. Like 32,000 people on there. Yeah, you're bound to get a lot of super chats. But even on small channels, I've seen it. $140,000 people.
You know, oftentimes,
Just as, Waters had pointed.
Okay, so according to their poll, 44% guilty, 9% not guilty, 36% will be hung. I'm undecided till after closings.
Return to 2.
Start a second channel, do candle videos, stuff like that. I know, I plan on it. I'm getting a lot of stuff ready this weekend. I'm waiting on stuff to come in before I do it. That's a big ass gun. No, I hear you, Miss PJ. I've seen a lot of big people that I would never watch. Doesn't make them bad. It's just not my cup of tea. They better not drag us out. The one day I decide to run this, and this is what happens. Make that make sense. Y'all bugged me. Run the trial, run the trial. So I run the trial, and look what happens. Is there anything else happening now? Justice coming soon. You never know. One never knows. But they've got about 15 minutes to start, or I'm going to bed. I don't know how much longer I could survive. I need to catch me some beauty sleep. And let me tell you, I'm too old for this shit. I'm way too old to be pulling all-nighters. See, I'm reading the chat. Paul was involved. I agree with that. I think there's something to it. Yeah, I'll be on tonight. It's March 1st. I made a promise to everybody. I was going back to my old ways March 1st. That guy's skinny. Hey, Adele. I can't believe the one day that I decide to stream it and this happens. But I'm telling you, I was laying down before. I was trying to go to bed and all I kept thinking about was Kohberger. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go live. That's it. I'm just going to go live and get it off my mind. The guy's like a dork. He needs to eat. He's too skinny. Well, I was live the other night. I haven't been steady, but I was live the other night talking about, I did a live going at I made it members only. Going after doing a reaction video to what's his name? The Glare. You miss nothing other than I'm getting really tired and I'm about to turn this off and go to bed. They've got about 10 minutes. That's about all I can survive. I'm trying to cover it, PJ. Trying. Trying. Nike shoes kept you up all night. No. Not the Nike shoes. The fact that last night when I was working last night, but I was looking for something on YouTube and all these channels had like this big production. They must be back because the cops are back. But they all had this big production of, oh my God, it's unsealed. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, that. So when I looked into it, I was like, there's fucking nothing here. This is bullshit. That's what had me up all night. They will go to lunch before closing starts. They probably will. That cop's kind of cute. How long is lunch though? Is lunch a half hour or an hour? Yeah, I couldn't get past everyone saying. Has he given it? Not that we know of. We'll know that before they start speaking. Yeah, but stoned, it's pointless. It doesn't mean anything. They didn't take a smoking gun that was worth a fuck. They took bullshit. They took stuff that's in everybody's house. It's not earth-shattering. The case isn't even in that state. Don't let sensationalism channels make you think it was more than it was. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. The only people that are making it out to be something are sensationalists. That's it. Everything they took was standard stuff that you would find in anybody's house. You know, if they would have found a knife, if they would have found something worth a fuck, I'd have a different story, but they haven't. They found nothing worth anything. Like, oh my God, they took a silver flashlight. They took a pair of Nike shoes. They took something else. Like, it's nothing. I understand, Gator. I'm just saying. Why do you think I'm so frustrated with YouTube? And they can watch it on sensationalism channels because I will not do it. I'm not going to dumb down to please people. People need to smarten up. And creators, if they knew what they were talking about, they would be able to tell you that it's nothing. But instead, they'd rather bleed you and make you think that it's something and that you're so great. And it's just wrong on so many levels. The jury gets 2 hours for lunch. That's a crazy lunch. You tell me all the time, smart enough. Not just you. I don't mean you per se. I'm saying in general, though. You're very into the sensationalists. You got to stay away from the sensationalists because they'll make something that isn't there. It's like making drama in true crime. Just stick with the facts. You don't need all the extra bullshit. Just stick with the facts. And if you know true crime, then you know the facts. But most of these people have no idea about true crime, the law, or anything. So that's why they think it means something when it means absolutely nothing. Huh. I kind of like this cop. He's cute. It scares me. So many people fall and bleed. Thank you, Vibes. I totally agree. No, I heard that, Amanda. I was going to call her. See, but I didn't get anything like my membership was paused or anything. You know, let me check on that. Hold on, because I don't check that email a lot. Let me check on that. But usually I would get it on my phone. Huh. Oh, it was paused? Yeah, that's what I'm checking now to see if mine was. If yours was, mine was. Copyright. Wasn't paused. I don't have any notification. I'm trying to think what email I have it under, though. Hold on. She got one yesterday. Yesterday was try. I don't know what email I would have signed up for. I'm trying to think what email it was under. Hey, Crystal. Yeah, Amanda, I'm going to call her, though. I don't know what's going on. I can't find it. Wonder if I go here. Purchases. Yeah, it says inactive channel. Access to perks is paused. Wow. Yeah, I'll have to call her. So she must have hit her channel, though. Yeah, I see why. I still should have got it. Alex in court. All right, hold on. He is? I'm on Law and Order. I'm not saying it. They're still showing this.
Matt back with us. So Matt, I definitely want to get your perspective on the defense opening statement that we saw there and how things have played out at trial and what we expect to hear from the defense in their closings. Now, Alec Murdaugh took the stand in his own defense. Of course, that is a defendant's right to do so. And we as attorneys may counsel that defendant not to testify all we want, but if they insist on it, that is their constitutional right to do so. Matt, I want to get your take. Do you think that Alec Murdaugh, by taking the stand, now that we are here on the sort of precipice of closing arguments in court, do you think that his testimony will ultimately hurt him or help him as we wait for the conclusion with closing arguments?
My opinion is that it didn't help him.
Okay, but they just driving up doesn't mean anything. They could now say, okay, we're back and we're going to go to lunch for 2 hours. I think you meant it was actually starting.
You know, it hurt him. I think strategy was very effective, and that was basically let him talk.
Yeah, it could be another 2 hours. Ugh. Ah. I'm getting sleepy. Guilty of financial fraud, not murder. Ah. See, once the awning gets closer and closer. Yeah, I agree, Bree. So many breaks. Can't believe I wake up to Laura streaming live and she goes to bed at the inappropriate time. I'm trying to hold on, Stoned. I really am. I am trying hard to hold on. One thing I also want to tell you guys that you may not know, because I know a lot of people are saying that, oh, he's going to get life in prison, blah, blah, blah. In South Carolina, one of the few states that do this, life in prison is 30 years. South Carolina doesn't actually have life as we know it. South Carolina has life 30 years max. So then they're going to take time off of that. So even if he does go to jail, he's going to do like 15 years. I'm trying to stay awake, I promise. But a girl needs her sleep. Yes, Crystal. I don't think he cares, though. He's got nothing left except Buster. I don't know. I'm not ruling out Paul was involved. To be honest. I can't rule that out. He seems shady. Something about him that just seems super shady to me. So he's 53. No, he's 55. I don't know. This will be interesting, though. If this is going to be a Casey Anthony type deal. If this is going to be a Casey Anthony type deal or not. He's 54 because I'm 52 and I was born in 71. Go do your current case searches while we wait. We'll keep you busy. Now, I'm really getting tired. I think I'm going to make me a cup of tea. As soon as they come back on, I'm going to go make some tea. I'm hooked on this Tazo tea. Probably helped in keeping me wide awake last night. I'm going to make some tea. I'll be right back.
This morning, both sides rested yesterday afternoon, and we're waiting to jump live back into that Walterboro, South Carolina courtroom to hear closing arguments. While we wait for those closing arguments, we're going to take a look back at some of the most important moments from the trial, and that leads me to the testimony of the defendant's surviving son, Buster Murdaugh. Let's take a look.
Were you sued?
Yes, sir.
Was your dad sued?
He was.
Was your mother sued?
Her estate became sued.
But before she was murdered, had she been sued?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay.
maybe.
And do you know if Paul had been sued?
No, I don't know that he had been sued.
Okay. Well, was your mother anxious about the civil lawsuit?
Yes, sir.
What was her biggest concern?
I would say her biggest concern was reading articles after, Mark Tinsley had made a statement about how much money he was wanting to collect in the civil lawsuits, and I think it was to the tune of like $40 million or something like that. He was trying to get, and that made her anxious.
And what was your reaction to statements like that?
Well, I mean, I knew what he was saying, but I mean, it's not, to me, it just didn't seem, I didn't think, well, I don't have $40 million, so.
Right. And was your dad anxious about the lawsuit, to your knowledge?
He didn't appear to be overly anxious about it.
What took priority, the criminal case against Paul or the civil case?
The criminal case.
Right. And did the family support Paul in the criminal matter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what do you mean by that?
I mean that supported him in his criminal case because, amongst the family, none of us thought that he was driving the boat. We thought he'd been...
At the time of the accident.
That's correct.
And then on June the 7th, we went through a host of number of telephone calls with you and your dad and mom leading up to 9:08, 9:10 on June 7th. Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
And what'd you do?
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone, and so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was in shock. But
Not trying to be rude, but man, he had some ugly kids.
eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
Do you remember what time you got to Moselle?
It was early in the morning, late in the morning. If we left around 10:30, 11, got there sometime probably around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so Buster Murdaugh testifying on the defense case in favor of his father. Let's bring in Joseph Scott Morgan and Matt Mangino to break this down. While we wait for closing arguments, we're all anticipating and anxious for those closing arguments to start. But let's talk about this testimony first. So Matt, I want to start with you. We saw the name of Buster Murdaugh on the defense witness list when the trial was starting. And of course, you could put someone on a witness list. You don't necessarily have to call that witness. But this was one of the first witnesses, if not the first, that the defense called on their case. What did you think of his testimony? And how do you think the jury now, inching towards those closing arguments, are going to ultimately take his testimony when they deliberate?
Well, Imran, there was no real substance to Buster's testimony. The only reason I think he was called as a witness to show that, in fact, he supports his father and that he still has a close and loving relationship with his father, and that he would testify on behalf of him. I think that goes along with the defense trying to show that, hey, he was a loving father and a loving husband, and there was nothing that indicated anything different prior to these murders. And this motive that he murdered his wife and his son to get sympathy because of the other criminal activity he was involved in is just a kind of a bridge too far. I think that's what they're going to argue. You're going to kill your wife and your son so that you get sympathy in regard to other criminal activity that you were involved in. It's not going to make that criminal activity go away. It's not going to make those investigations necessarily go away. In fact, it started some of these investigations. So I think they're going to pound away with the motive that the prosecution has presented to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just doesn't add up.
Yeah, and Joseph, the sort of psychology behind it. Now, this Buster Murdaugh's testifying for his father, but he also lost his mother and his brother. So do you think the jury's going to look at that and think, all right, well, he testified for Alec Murdaugh, he's supporting him. How do you think they're going to digest that at the end of the day?
Hard to tell. When you compare his testimony to even former law associates who were very emotional in the course of their examinations, and I guess Alec too, he's kind of flat. I don't know that he was a very impressive witness, and to Matt's point, I don't really understand what his purpose was other than these kind of familial ties.
I will tell you, they literally have 10 minutes left, and then I'm closing down. This is not worth it. These guys are boring me to tears.
To demonstrate that Murdaugh had a family.
Yeah.
So that's about all you can make up.
Joseph Scott Morgan, Matt Mangino, thanks for joining me today. We have not thrown into court during my show. Linda Kenny Bowden is coming up next. That's her job, probably. Let's take a break here to the next show. Thank you for joining me here at Law and Crime.
They have more fucking breaks than I've ever seen on any channel. They got more breaks than a network TV show. They're literally breaking every 7 minutes. Crazy. So yeah, as soon as my tea is done, if they're not in court, I'm shutting down. I don't even have anything left to talk about. Like, I'm just sitting here like, duh. Like, I've already said everything I gotta say. So I'm like, But I'm getting really tired. I mean, shit, it's almost 11 o'clock. I've been up like 30 hours? Yeah, but you know what? At this rate, they may not even do closing arguments today. To probably do it fresh tomorrow. Would you wear ankle socks with a cross? No, I wouldn't. But that's me. No, I don't wear Crocs. Crocs to me is super uncomfortable. They're like rubber shoes. Like hard rubber. No, I stayed up all night doing fucking dating shit for him leaving today. Him and Sage left today. They still need lunch break, yes. Him and Sage went to a trip. Thank you, Gator. Went on a trip. They're in state nationals. And they're gone for 5 days. And of course, my 15-year-old boy had nothing ready. I think he already started to, Amanda. Oh, they're in. I guess they're finally in. They heard my 10 minutes. Look at that packed courthouse. I need lots of super chats. I did make tea. Exactly, Crystal. No, but Dayton had no laundry done. He wasn't prepared. He wasn't ready. I'm not going to let him go and, like, embarrass his sister. He's going to be rooming with, like, 3 people. So I wanted to make sure everything was good. And I ended up staying up all night. Then I wanted to say goodbye to them, make sure I gave them a hug and a kiss. So I had to wait till they got up for school. And then I couldn't fall asleep. So I was like, well, we're here. I might as well just, stay up. Like 4 o'clock becomes 5 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock becomes 6 o'clock. And then 6 o'clock, they're getting ready. What's Alex reading? You won't be in chat. Thank you, Crystal. Monica, you know what it is? I was just raised that way. And, like, I was raised, hey, Grandma Rose. I mean, granted, my parents had a lot more money than I have. Although, if you ask my daughter, she thinks I'm super rich. But, you going away. Why'd it cut off? You going away, going on a school trip. You need brand new socks, brand new underwear, perfectly clean clothes. Like, can't go with dirty socks. So you need a brand new toothbrush. I don't know. It's just how I was raised. Where he would just throw everything in a bag. I had to make them little shampoo bottles and all that fun stuff. And it's for 5 days. Phoenix was so excited. He's like, it's really just you and me for 5 days? I said, yep, sure is. It'd be so nice, put something in the refrigerator, and it won't be gone 2 hours later. I know, I don't know why it's not playing. If it doesn't play, I'll play it. Thank you, Crystal. No, he doesn't care, Amanda, so I had to do everything. All right, Crystal, just for you.
Super chat. Wait, I just got a super chat. Hold on, wait. Somebody just hit me with a super chat. Who was that? You didn't have to do that. You's a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help subscribe, view, chat. But you's a boss and I conclude that. Super super chat. Who is that? You didn't have to do that. Use a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help. Subscribe, view chat, but you a boss and I conclude that. Thank you for the money, it goes a long way. It helps me run the channel, so you get all my thanks. Just bought me lunch to get me through the day. I appreciate the love and I hope I can repay you for the super chat. Who is that? You didn't have to do that. You a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help. Subscribe, view chat, but you a boss and I conclude that. Super chat, who is that? You didn't have to do that. You a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help. Subscribe, view chat, but you a boss and I conclude that. Don't like the video, don't hit subscribe. I always try to tell them, they do it every time. I tell them it's a problem, they acting like it's fine. I'm begging them to stop, but they leave me with a like. Please don't like the video, don't hit subscribe. I always try to tell them, but they do it every time. I tell them it's a problem, but they acting like it's fine. I'm begging them to stop, but they leave me with a like. Super chat. Wait, I just got a super chat. Hold on, wait. Somebody just hit me with a super chat. Who is that? You didn't have to do that. Use a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help. Subscribe, view chat, but use a boss and I conclude that. Super chat, who is that? You didn't have to do that. Use a big dog supporter and you prove that. There's plenty other ways to help. Subscribe, view chat, but you a boss and I conclude that.
That was just for you, Crystal. That's what I'm saying. Like, he would just shove shit in a bag. I'm like, no. You're not going away with your sister for 5 days and being nasty. It's not going to happen. So I made little labels on shampoo and conditioner and body wash so they can't get confused. So she comes home, she's like, where's my little bottles? I said, don't worry, I made you some too. So yeah, I had to make them all little bottles. And of course, you know, he had nothing ready. And then I had to run around yesterday because he needed a black button down. Thank God I found one. So I tell him this morning, don't forget your dress pants and your shoes. But I'm surprised he didn't call me like, oh my God, Mom, I forgot something. Sage is in theater. She's in advanced theater. It's like a travel theater. And for the first time ever, they made it to the state championships, I guess. State nationals? Either state nationals or state championships. I didn't even know there was one for theater. And Chris, I'll be your mom. And so, yeah. So Dayton's a techie. Hey, Shelly. Dayton's a techie for the drama club. So the one thing is they've never been in it. This is the one play that Sage is the lead on, which is pretty cool. So they went to, yeah, it's either state nationals or state championship. I think it's state championship. It's the highest you can go. And I bought him like $80 worth of snacks. See what's crazy to me though? Honestly, they were charging each kid $700. And I said, there's no way. It's not happening. There's no way I'm paying $1,400. I will drive you guys for less than that. It's not happening. So they ended up only having to pay like $2 and change a piece, and then they did fundraising for the rest. But I'm like, these people are fucking crazy. And then they still have to buy all their meals. I was like, don't worry, $1,400 for the two of you, I'll drive you. It's like, Mom, I said, I'm not paying $1,400 for the two of you to go. Screw that. You better start fundraising more.
Waters. So,
Oh, come on, dude. You were so close. I thought we were starting. Ah, thanks, Crystal. I don't know any differently, though. See, but Sage treats me like I treated my parents. The difference is my parents were rich. She don't seem to understand that. She thinks I'm like rolling in dough. She's one of these, oh, my mom will cover it. Oh, my mom will pay. No. You know, misentitled. Come on, people, start. Judge is going to start and say, okay, it's lunchtime. Come on, this isn't a fucking wedding. And then I bought him a little bag like at TJ Maxx to put his bathroom stuff in. So then I had this brilliant idea of putting his underwear in Ziplocs. And then I put his socks in Ziplocs. He's like, Mom, why are they all in Ziplocs? I said, to keep them organized. What does I like to do? I do not ship. Exactly. Sage seems to think I do. And I looked at my parents like that, but literally my parents had a lot of money. So I knew it was no big deal. Tell my daughter how to pack it. No, Sage is fine. Sage knows how to pack. I even asked her, I said, do you need anything? She's like, no, I got everything. She goes, yeah, I just need little plastic, things for shampoo and stuff. But other than that, no.
all right, you may bring the jury.
Bring in the jury so we can go to lunch. And Laura takes a nap.
Jury is present, sir. All right, thank you. Let's wait till everyone gets settled. Welcome again, once again. Day number 27. And you have heard all of the testimony, received all of the evidence. You've visited the scene of the alleged crimes. And now it's time for closing arguments. First, by the state, Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good morning. It's been a long trial, hasn't it? On June 7th, 2021, at the Moselle property in Colleton County, Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh were brutally and maliciously murdered at the kennels by Alec Murdaugh. Paul, as you know, suffered 2 shotgun blasts. Maggie suffered 5 blackout rifle wounds. And after an exhaustive investigation, there is only one person who had the motive, who had the means, who had the opportunity to commit these crimes, and also whose guilty conduct after these crimes betrays him. The defendant was the one person who was living a lie. The defendant is the person on which a storm was descending, and the defendant is a person where his own storm would actually mean consequences for Maggie and Paul, and consequences for those who trusted him. And that person is the defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh. I know this has been a long trial because it's a complicated case. And I'm not going to talk forever, I promise. But I am going to try to distill this down for you. And the first thing I want to do is set the stage. And to set the stage, we have to understand a little bit about Alec Murdaugh and who he was and who he is. He was a person of singular prominence and respect in this community. But he's also a person who's been able to avoid accountability for all of his life. While he was outwardly giving the illusion of wealth and a very lucrative law practice, some bad land deals and that sort of thing, exacerbated by the economic recession, led to some financial problems. And then he had some big cases in the early 2011, 2012. And all his partners, and you've heard testimony to this, thought that had taken care of things. You've heard cases like the Thomas case and the Pinckney case and the Plyler case and the Badger case. But the evidence that you've heard shows that the defendant became so addicted and so dependent on a velocity of money that the millions of dollars in legal fees that he was receiving was not enough. And so he started to steal. And how did he steal? He stole by billing personal expenses to the firm. He stole by stealing from his own family. You heard the testimony about the check he stole from his brother Randy. But then the main ways were 2 schemes that he developed. And the first one was to get checks made out from the client trust account to Palmetto State Bank, to fast talk the staff and fast talk the clients with those disbursements, and then take it to Palmetto State Bank, where his buddy Russell Lafitte would convert those and use those to pay personal expenses. And each time, until the end, it worked because the client was also getting a big check. And they were walking out of there thinking that everything had been fine, when it was not. But then in 2015, he opened up the fake Forge account. And then all he had to do was get disbursements paid out to the Forge account. And once he did that, he would convert those to his personal use. And to do that, though, he also had to fast talk staff and fast talk clients. And that scheme continued up until everything fell apart in the end. The other thing you have to understand is during this time when he's earning millions of dollars and stealing millions of dollars, he's also borrowing millions of dollars from wherever he can. The bank, his law partners, his father, and it still wasn't enough. And this slow burn was continuing and continuing until the boat crash happened in February of 2019. And that changed everything. That set in motion things that were going to happen because of the criminal charges related to that case as well as the civil charges related to that case. And in the aftermath of the boat case, things changed. The pace of his stealing increased. In fact, that's when he stole the money from Tony Satterfield that you heard.
Let me just say real quick, if I was sitting on that jury, my thought is, but there was no life insurance, so he didn't kill them for money. So all this money talk has nothing to do with being a murderer.
From. Ultimately stole about $4.5 million between the Satterfields and others. And unlike other cases, Tony Satterfield, who was the son of his longtime housekeeper, he took all the money. Took every bit of it. And that was coming to a head as we move into the spring of 2021, because there had been some publicity, and you heard from Tony Satterfield that he was the defendant reached out in the spring of 2021 because there had been publicity and saying, hey, I'm still working on the case, everything's fine, I'm still working on the case, it's good. But the reality is the defendant didn't have that money to pay it back. And he had one saving grace, because as you've heard, they don't get paid until the end of the year. And his saving grace was the Ferris case, which they tried in December. They get the verdict and get paid in March, and that's when he convinces Chris Wilson to send those $792,000 of fees to him. But the problem is that only lasted for about 2 months. $792,000 only lasted for about 2 months. And then he's running out of money again. Meanwhile, you've heard in the boat case that Mark Tinsley was seeking to get a large personal recovery from Alec Murdaugh of $10 million because he thought, as many people did, that he was wealthy and had a lot of money. And when they said he didn't, he filed a motion to compel. And you've heard testimony about whether or not that had been granted, but it doesn't change the fact that that's what Mark Tinsley was seeking to do. And that boat case hearing had been scheduled for June 10th. In May of 2021, as we move into June, that's when Alec's own paralegal got the expense check for the Ferris case, but not the fee check, and tried to raise that to Alec and couldn't get a straight answer, tried to raise it to Chris Wilson and couldn't get a straight answer, to his office. And so it goes to Jeannie Seckinger, and Jeannie Seckinger goes to the partners, and they can't get an answer about that either. And they want an answer to that because they're worried, because Alec has been talking about structuring fees, and they're worried he may be trying to hide assets because of the boat case, and they don't want to be a part of that. All of these things are coming to a head, and his finances are falling apart. And you heard from the banker there. You heard where his finances were at on June 7th, 2021. And you saw what happened in the wake of that. Within a short period of time, he was negative $347,000. On June 7th, 2021, he was in the office. He was working on the boat case, working on those financial disclosures, when Jeannie Seckinger came in and confronted him about those fees that he no longer had and couldn't pay back. And on June 7th, 2021, and he tells this to Jeannie Seckinger, his father, Randolph, is having a very difficult time. And while they might have said it was some positive news, the reality is that he was very, very sick. And he had always been someone that the defendant could go to, that he could borrow money from. And so that pressure is happening as well. And on June 7th, 2021, as all these pressures were mounting, the defendant killed Maggie and Paul. And how do we know that? We're going to talk in detail about that. But the timeline puts him there. The forensic timeline puts him there. The use of his family weapons corroborates that. And his lies and guilty actions afterwards confirms it. And we'll go over each of those in great detail. Before we get to that, though, I want to finish out. Because in the wake of this, everything changes. All those things that were coming to a head immediately go away. It's a different world now. They're not asking about the Ferris fees anymore. And you heard testimony to that. Mark Tinsley doesn't believe the case is going to have the same value anymore because the sympathies of the case have changed after this tragedy. And you heard that. And who would better understand that than Alec Murdaugh, who does the same work? The boat case hearing goes away. And everyone immediately rallies around Alec Murdaugh. And it worked. Because it allowed him to borrow $250,000 from Johnny Parker, his law partner, who of course wouldn't have loaned him that money if he knew what Alec was up to, and allowed him to go to Palmetto State Bank and get $350,000 in an off-the-books loan that hadn't even been applied for, and to send that money to Chris Wilson and convince Chris Wilson to pay another $192,000 of his own money, and to send an email to the firm that everything was okay. And that made it another month or so until Annette Griswold found that Ferris check in his office, and Jeannie Seckinger looked up the forged accounts. And what happened in the wake of that? What was the reaction of Alec Murdaugh? Within a day of September 3rd of him being forced to resign, his buddy Chris Wilson is trying to see him, comes and sees him on September 4th and confronts him about what he's been doing. And then within 2 hours, the side of the road happens. And Alec is a victim again. When accountability was at his door, he was a victim again. And he told a extremely detailed lie and went so far as to draw a composite sketch with the police of this assailant. And the accountability that had arrived at his doorstep again, he tried again, tried to get it to go away, and it worked for a little while. People thought, oh my gosh, what's happened here? Should we be suspicious of Alec anymore? But this time it fell apart a little quicker because his own brother figured out that he was trying to buy drugs. And the case fell apart very quickly. This is the setup for what we look at and what's going on. And it seems like a story that's far removed from most people's experience because it is. It is a different story like has never been seen before. But the reason is that he is a different man than the kind of stories that we've seen before. This is a different set of circumstances than we've seen before. And it's certainly easy to understand when you have a middle-aged man who's outwardly successful, who has a strong family legacy, who has a prominence in the community and a reputation, but is living a lie. Is living a lie. And that leads to and can lead to those pressures being overwhelming and actions like this happening. Husbands have been killing wives, unfortunately, for years, and husbands killing sons goes back as far as King Herod, probably further. When those pressures mount and someone becomes a family annihilator. Now the computer input, please. All right. We got to do a little law school. I'm certainly not a professor, but we need to go through a few of the concepts here. And one of the most important concepts is the fundamental role, one of the fundamental roles while y'all are here. As the judge has told you, he's the judge of the law, but y'all are the judge of the facts. And what does judge of the facts mean? Well, a big part of that is that you determine credibility. You determine which witnesses you want to rely on or not rely on. You can rely on a part of a witness's testimony, all of a witness's testimony, one against many, many against one. It's up to each one of you individually to make that determinations and decisions, and then to collectively discuss those into a group decision. But credibility is important. Is it believable? Is what somebody's telling you believable? And there's many things you can consider in credibility, but a few of those are the demeanor of the witness on the witness stand, whether the witness has a reason to be biased, whether the testimony of the witness was contradicted on one hand or supported or corroborated on another, whether the witness has been dishonest in the past. And again, you can believe witnesses all against one against others, and you can believe portions of a witness's testimony as you see fit. Same thing goes for experts. Expert is a legal determination that allows them to give an opinion. Just because someone's qualified as an expert doesn't mean that you have to accept their opinion. You can judge that based on your assessment of the credibility and the relevance and the believability of that testimony. There's nothing different about that when someone's an expert. Beyond a reasonable doubt, I talked about this at the beginning of the case. And it's our burden. It's a burden we welcome. It's how this system works, that we have to prove the guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And what is a reasonable doubt? A reasonable doubt is a doubt that makes a reasonable, honest, sincere juror hesitate to act. It's proof that a reasonable person would not hesitate to rely on in their affairs. But a reasonable doubt is not and leaves you firmly convinced of the guilt of the defendant, but it doesn't have to overcome every possible doubt. It doesn't have to overcome every possible doubt. I used to try a case against a defense attorney, and he would pull up a picture or something. Right here I have the Mona Lisa. And he would tear off a piece like that and say, ladies and gentlemen, that's reasonable doubt. And my response to that is, you still know what this is, right? You still know what it is. And that's reasonable doubt, okay? If you still know what it is and you're firmly convinced, then it's your duty under the oath that you've taken as the judge will give you the law to convict the defendant. Direct and circumstantial. Directly proves the existence of the fact, and circumstantial evidence is proof of a chain of facts and circumstances indicating the existence of that fact. And we talked a little bit about that at the beginning. Sometimes people in common discussions will say, oh, the case is just circumstantial. But the law says that doesn't matter. The circumstantial evidence can be just as good as direct evidence. It is just as good. It makes no distinction between that, and the judge will charge you on that. There's no greater degree of certainty required of circumstantial evidence than of direct evidence. The circumstances must be consistent with each other and when taken together point conclusively to the guilt of the defendant. And I gave you all an illustration at the beginning. I'm not going to redo the whole thing, but about being inside. And you go outside and it starts raining, and then you know it's raining, okay, because you got direct evidence, you're getting wet. But if you go inside and you're in a closed room and all of a sudden it gets dark and you hear thunder and you hear the wind rustling and you hear the rain coming down on top of the roof, and then after an hour or so you go outside and the sun's shining, but there's limbs all down in the yard and it's wet as far as the eye can see, and there are puddles in the yard and puddles in the driveway. Is there any reasonable doubt what happened, that it rained? Now, again, I'll say it again. Supposedly, I guess somebody could have sprayed the whole neighborhood with a hose and blown a fan to blow the wind down, or blow the limbs down, simulate wind, but that's not a reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen. Circumstantial evidence can be just as strong as direct evidence. It is just as strong. The law makes no distinction just because it's circumstantial. All right, let's talk about murder. Murder is the willful killing of someone with malice aforethought. It's the unlawful and willful killing of any person by one with malice aforethought. The crime of murder is really, as far as the elements go, fairly simple. The operative terms here, the most important terms, are malice, which is the mental state that the person must have, and aforethought. But let's talk about those. What exactly do they mean? Malice, and it could be any of these. It can be the hatred, ill will, or hostility towards another, but it also can be the intentional doing of a wrongful act with an intent to inflict an injury under the circumstances that the law would infer an evil intent. It could be a general malignant recklessness of the lives and safety of others. It could be a wicked or depraved spirit intent on doing wrong. It could be using firearms, shotgun in a blackout to blow somebody away. That can be malice, ladies and gentlemen, if that's what you decide. A forethought. Sounds like it has to be planned, and certainly planning would account for a forethought, but it may be conceived at the very moment, a split second, or in conjunction with the act. So a forethought doesn't require planning for that malice to occur. All it has to do is exist in the moment, just a split second, or in the moment that the act occurs. So when that trigger's pulled, as long as there's that intentional doing of a wrongful act, intent to inflict an injury, there would be an evil intent, a malignant recklessness, which you can infer from the circumstances of the case, then that's all you need. And how do you do that? I said infer, because people don't always yell out what their intentions are. You have to infer it from the circumstances of the case itself. Look at the crime scene, look at what happened, look at the backstory, look at all the circumstances that come together, and you can infer malice from those. Last little bit of law school. Malice and drugs. Voluntary intoxication does not impair a person's ability to act with malice aforethought. That's a legal principle. If you voluntarily get intoxicated, it is not a defense to a crime, and it does not negate the malicious nature of that crime. If one voluntarily intoxicates themselves, they are just as responsible for their actions as when they are not intoxicated. And the judge, again, take what the law comes from the judge, but this is a legal principle that you will hear. Voluntary intoxication is not a defense to a crime. And why does the law say that? Well, you can't take whatever it is and deny responsibility for what you've done under the law. All right? Move through this quickly because we've already talked about it. And just for scheduling, I'm going to have to stop my argument so that we can all eat. But I'll give you all a chance to get away from this for a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and go through some of this that we just talked about, but very quickly. Gathering storm in Alec's life. We talked about the family legacy. You heard of how important that was to him and how important that was to this family and how it was in danger because of the boat case. The criminal charges as well as the civil charges. That legacy was in danger. And it was threatening also to expose him for who he really was, which would totally destroy his part of that legacy. Lose his career, lose his bar license, face consequences like he's never seen. He's also a successful lawyer and a part-time prosecutor. And as we go through and talk about the circumstances of this case and talk about the crime scene and the timeline and all the rest of it, think of it with that in mind. That this is an individual who is trained to understand how to put together cases, complex cases. He's been a prosecutor. He's done complex car wrecks. He understands the law. He's given closing arguments to juries before. So when you have a defendant like that, be thinking about whether or not this individual is constructing defenses and constructing alibis. We've talked about his law practice. You've heard how lucrative it is. I had to struggle with him to get him to admit that he was wealthy, making more than $1 million a year. I'll let y'all decide whether or not that's wealthy, but he admitted ultimately that that was not uncommon for him to make that much money on top of stealing and borrowing on top of that. The important thing, though, to remember again, and I want to highlight this, is that they get, under the way that firm worked, they get their money at the end of the year. And then it's up to them to make it last. And that's the big problem that he had. That's why he had to get the Ferris fees. He can't, if he's out of money in May, he's not going to, unless he can borrow it or steal it, he's out of luck. And the hounds were at the gate. All right, we talked about this. He's got, you heard, I think Jeannie described him as having intentional chaos. We had the land deals. He's servicing this huge debt load. He constantly needs new money coming in. And this has been going on for more than a decade, a constant hamster wheel. The stress and the pressure of that would be extreme because it's been going on for so long, always having to stay one step ahead of the game, always having to beg, literally beg, borrow, or steal for over a decade to have the truth from being exposed. That's been going on all that time. The big cases, his partners think he's straightened it out and paid off his debts, but he hadn't. He's getting paid millions of dollars, but he's stealing on top of that. It's not enough to keep that hamster wheel going. So he borrows and he steals. The methods I mentioned, you got the PSB checks, you got the fake forge, you got fake business expenses, running the firm card, and from his family and his law partners. Each one of these depends on him being able to sit down and look someone in the eye and convince them that what they're doing is right, when in reality that wasn't happening. And all those clients trusted him based on those. And we sat there and went through that, and it may have been exhausting, and I apologize for that, but he couldn't tell you about one conversation that he had that stuck with him. That's how easily it came to him. Is that relevant to your consideration of what he had to say to you? That's for y'all to decide. Couldn't name one conversation. Just had that same answer that he had rehearsed. And didn't want to talk about any of those individuals who trusted him, as he looked you in the eye and asked you to do the same. Down to the bottom. It's not just the clients, too. It's his staff. They're doing the paperwork. They're filling all that out. He had to fast talk them as well. Alex's situation, I think, is akin to a Ponzi. And a Ponzi's kind of like a pyramid scheme where it depends on new money coming in to pay old investors. And it works. It'll work for a long time as long as you can keep that money coming in. But the second you can't, the second that you're out of options, it crashes and burns. That's how every Ponzi crashes and burns. And that's the situation that fundamentally his finances were like. And that's the situation that was arriving in June of 2021. when he was at the scene with the victims minutes before they died and lied to everyone who would listen about it. A gathering storm. The boat case, other factors that were arising, each one leading to that inevitable day of reckoning. You had the trial lawyers conference where he was confronted. Mark Tinsley was confronted by Alec. Alec, of course, denied it. Everybody's lying on Alec. Alec's telling you the truth, even though everyone who knew him had no idea who he was. Everyone. No one knew who he really was. The people who came in here and said we thought this about him, not a single person knew who he really was. That's how convincing he is. But he denies this confrontation. When Mark Tinsley was like, he bows up on Mark Tinsley. He's like, "What you doing, man, about the boat case?" And Mark says, "You're going to have to pay money to the Beach family. Millions of dollars." Alec doesn't have that. He's barely one step ahead of the game at this point. He doesn't have insurance coverage anymore, or at least not a big umbrella policy. And why? Because his insurance company dropped him after the Satterfield case. Insurance company thinks the money went to the Satterfield boys, but it didn't. They don't know that he's stolen it all.
This has absolutely nothing to do with the murder at all. He's not saying anything about the murder. This is ridiculous.
But they don't want to insure him anymore. So he doesn't have that to help him pay the Beach case. And so what's the one hope he has? And that's the Ferris case. And it's tried, and you get a verdict in February of 2021, $792,000. And eventually, he tells Chris Wilson, "I'm going to structure those," which is a lie, and gets the fees sent to him in March. And is spent in 2 months. But the boat case isn't going away. Mark says, "Show us your books if you're telling me you're broke." I think his testimony was, they said that he could probably cobble together $1 million, which I guess that's broke for him, but it wasn't enough. And so they refuse, and that's what leads to the motion to compel. And there's been a lot of argument about, is that going to be granted or not? Would the judge have granted it? What we do know is that Mark Tinsley said that's what he was seeking to do, and he was seeking to do it because he had been told by the defense that he didn't have money. So he's like, prove it. None of us believe that, knowing what we know about you in this community. Prove it. Well, Alec can't have anybody painting his financial records because it's all going to be apparent. That forged account is going to open right up. He can't have that happen. It will all end. He'll lose his career. He will lose his livelihood. He will face investigations and consequences like he's been able to avoid his entire life. But if he can just stay one step ahead, just 1 month longer, 1 day longer, then he's never going to have to face that accountability that he has to face. The hearing is scheduled for June 10th, 2021. And no one's here to argue to you that it's definitely going to be granted. All we're arguing to you is what the witnesses said they were intending to do. And as you've seen in court over the past 6 weeks, things happen and a process starts. And once that process starts, there's a conclusion to it. There's a conclusion to that. And then you heard from Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and talked about the fact that there was some coverage about this case as we move into the spring of 2021, and he hears from Alec, and Alec lies to him and says, we're hoping to get this case moving, and you saw the text message to that effect when the reality was that it had already been stolen. How's he going to pay that, ladies and gentlemen? That's millions of dollars. costs millions of dollars. And eventually, they're going to figure out that this money's already been paid. The insurance company thinks it's gone in the right place. At some point, the question is going to get asked, and that alone is going to break everything apart. Ferris case, this is when his paralegal finds the expense check and not the fee check. And I've already told you this part of the story, and y'all have heard the testimony, but it sets off that inquiry from the second juror. So now we have this on top of everything else that we're mentioning. This is like nothing he's ever experienced. He's always been able to stay one step ahead of the game. But after the boat case, his appetite's increased greatly. He started stealing millions of dollars, and now he's running out of options, and all these factors are converging. All they're converging. And they're converging on 1 week, 1 day. And that arrives. His father's in the hospital. There's a confrontation with Jeannie. Alec tells her, manages to ward off the conversation by saying Mr. Randolph is terminal. He, of course, denies that, so I guess Jeannie's lying on him too. But that's what she says happened. He's working on the boat case. And then the tragedy happens. And it worked. It's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason. The pressures on this man were unbearable, and they were all reaching a crescendo the day his wife and son were murdered by him. All on that day. And in the wake of this, everything changes. People stop asking about these things. The community has changed like you would expect. People are concerned, they're scared, they're worried. And everything's changed. The backlash from the boat case has gone away, and all of that has changed. And that's why Mark Tinsley thought his case was over. This may seem like, really? But who would understand that better than him? This is exactly the kind of work he did. His skills as a lawyer were understanding the emotional value of a case, understanding the sympathies of a case. If you have a sympathetic plaintiff and an unsympathetic defendant, that is, in the civil world, that's a big case. But if those get reversed, if those change, if all of a sudden your defendant is more sympathetic, it changes it. It changes the entirety of what Mark Tinsley's position on this case was for the Beach family, that Alec was going to have to pay money. And that's what he told you from the stand. He said if Alec had been the victim of some unsuspect or some random vigilante, the entirety of the case has changed. And I'm not taking the same position. I'm not trying to demand that level of recovery. He gets a $750. Well, he gets $600 of it. Ultimately gets a $750 loan. He convinces Chris Wilson. That heads off to Ferris. That's pretty much the main thing he did after this, was to make sure he could get that money, enough of it to Chris Wilson so that he would send an email to the law firm saying, hey, everything's cool, I got it. It's all good. And that's what the law firm thought. It's the main thing he did in the wake of the murders of his wife and son, was he made sure to stay, again, one step ahead of the game because he had more time now. He had time he didn't have on June 7th, but he had it now. And that's the first thing he did. It's the first thing he did. It's the main thing he did, was keep the hamster wheel going. I know it seems like a lot, but you have to consider the unique circumstances of this particular man. This particular man who has proven over and over again that he will do anything to keep that hamster wheel going and to avoid accountability. And he's been doing it for over 10 years. He just finally reached a point that he had never reached before. course, the hearing on the motion to compel gets canceled. Who would go forward with that in the wake of what's happened? That goes away. Doesn't. I think you heard from the testimony up there, it doesn't get rescheduled till long after everything crashes and burns in September. It doesn't even get rescheduled in the wake of this. You don't have to worry about that either, and the potential that had for exposing who he was. Because the second somebody looks at his accounts, the second his own partner, Danny Henderson, looks at his accounts in representing him and says, well, let me see him, he can't do that. He can't do that. He can't even show them to his own partner. Because what's going to happen? They're going to see it too. He can't let that happen, or everything falls apart. And he loses everything, including that legacy that you heard from individuals up there is so important to him, more important than anything. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is the timeline. And you can see, and I'll let y'all look at that, but you can see how this develops, how this hamster wheel continues, how he always has to be one step ahead of the game. You know, we've talked about the Redbeard and the Zero United. Those are the land deals that went bad. They get charged off, but yet Palmetto State Bank, still dealing with him. He then appoints Russell Lafitte a conservator and borrows up to $1 million from the Plower Girls' accounts without their knowledge. And then he has to steal money from the Badger case, where he's already making a huge amount of legal fees. He has to steal money from the Badger case to pay off the Plower Girls before they turn 18, and then there's an accounting for that. And then he opens up the Forge account, and it continues. $338,000 from Dion Martin, Johnny Bush, Manuel Sanders, and Richard, $225,000. He's maxing out $1 million line of credit. The only way to stay afloat is to beg, borrow, and steal. He's maxing out $1 million line of credit. He steals some more money, but he's right back to where he was. March of 2018, he's now maxed out not only $1 million line of credit, but also a $600,000 line of credit. A line of credit, almost like a credit card, maxed out. Then the boat crash happens, and look what happens to the figures. $3.7 million, $1.1 million, $1 million. And then you have the double homicide. This is some of the exhibits. This is, as you recall, there'll be the statements, and they're in evidence showing the defendant's assets on June 7th, 2021, and the reds are his liabilities. That one's green, but it's negative. And then over here, that's where he was a couple months later. He borrowed $750,000 and still ended up $347,000 in the hole, which part of that had to cover. I think it was called the most generous overdraft policy ever conceived. Because, in fairness, though, he did get a $5 overdraft charge right there. So, anyway. All right, what else do we have? Because we've talked about a lot of things about the finances, and I know that there's been a lot of that, but it's really the only way to understand all the things that were affecting this middle-aged, outwardly successful professional man who had all these pressures upon him, like no one had ever seen. Well, we've got the pills. He claims he's had a pill addiction for 20 years. What does he say about that? He says it makes him paranoid. He says it makes him agitated. He says opiates give him energy. Use your common sense about that. But he also says, and he even said this in the telephone interview after the side of the road, that the withdrawals will make you do anything to get rid of them. That's common sense as well. We know how powerful opiates can be and how the addiction of opiates can be extremely powerful. The withdrawals, not being dope sick, can be extremely powerful. But he's also saying he's taking 1,000 milligrams a day. And he's trying to blame all his theft on that. But that's not what these records reflect. They reflect an insatiable desire for money and a hamster wheel that's been going on for a long time. And you don't really see the escalation from his drug dealer until March of 2021. I would ask you also, one of the tenets of juries is common sense. That's what you're here for, is for an individual and then a collective common sense. Common sense, 1,000 milligrams a day, does that sound survivable? He sat there on that stand and told you that's what he was taking. And as we're going to go through this process, we're going to talk about what he said on the stand and how many times on the fly that he looked you in your eyes and didn't tell you the truth. He's very good at it. His own partner said that. He's very, very good at it. I'll leave it to you to decide whether 1,000 milligrams a day is survivable with opiates. And if it was, that you could still engage in work, have a successful practice, and then on top of that, engage in these complex conspiracies to steal and fool everyone and live a life and have people outwardly think that you're, who you profess to be in public. If you were taking 1,000 milligrams a day, does that make common sense? I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't. I have no doubt that he was taking opiate pills. But I think he looked you, and I would submit to you to decide whether or not he looked you in the eye and claimed them out as inconsistent with whatever else we know about this man. It's really inconsistent with survivability as a matter of common sense. He could never function at the level he's been functioning, keeping up with these pressures, staying one step ahead for over a decade if he was taking that much dope. I would submit to you. Just one other lie that I would submit to you as a lie that he's trying to get you to believe, to feel sympathetic for him, as if the dope was the cause of the money and the cause of his issues, when the reality is it wasn't. This has been going on for a long time, and the finances prove differently. But what else about this? You've seen the interviews. And we're going to play some clips of these interviews, but I'm not going to play them all for you again. You've watched them. But if you have any questions, go back and watch them. He talks about being paranoid. Listen, watch those interviews when he's with Dave Owen. He doesn't look like he's withdrawing from any drugs. His responses are appropriate. He's not in displaying any paranoia. He's smooth. He's focused on the events. He's focused on trying to get information about the case from law enforcement officers, which is interesting in its own right. Why is he so focused on that? And in Savannah, where supposedly he was detoxing, he sat down, as you've heard the testimony, with a composite sketch artist and went through the whole process to come out with this picture.
All right, I love you guys, but I gotta get sleep. I am sitting here in my chair, totally falling asleep. So you guys have to go to another channel. I apologize, but yeah, I have to get some sleep. But I will see you guys later. Hopefully I'll be up in a few hours. If not, I will see you guys tonight. Love you. Thank you so much, Crystal and Gator. Enjoy the rest of this. I'm going to bed. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.